Mayor Owens.
Here. We're going to change that 5:30 to 5:41. So make sure that is noted in your notes, Ms. Lentz. We're going to open it up for the first part of the hearing of the public. Would anybody like to say anything? Would anybody like to say anything for the hearing of the public? Seeing none, the hearing of the public is closed. We're going to go straight into city manager candidate interviews, starting with Elk Doom. It starts at 6 p.m., but since we have a couple minutes, we will probably be speaking on some things, and we're going to start that with city manager Brian Cotton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to present everything possible in terms of information about our candidates tonight are before you. Number one, we got a comment card from last night. I put it down in front of Councilmember Mayor Monique Owens. And there might be some suggested questions from people in the audience, and there's some comment cards back there if anyone comes in and wants to make comments and hand it to somebody. So public input has been invited throughout this process. What is before you, a couple things. I've asked Brian to change location. Great idea. It was my idea, but I support Linda, who made that suggestion, that the candidates sit there where Brian normally sits. So they have a microphone and they're on camera. And last year we had some issues with technology and getting it laid out and set up. So I thought that was a great solution. So if that works for you, we'll leave it that way. If it doesn't, we'll go downstairs and bring up a table. Today we had a good opportunity to meet with each candidate as a leadership team. So at the end of the process tonight, I have those results to share with you. We printed off everything that is related to each of the two finalists, and it's in front of you. They're in rough chronological order. The references were summarized in our earlier conversations, but here they are in the entire, full couple pages, as well as anything that was found in our Google searches. Recognize that if you make a conditional offer, there's still a full background check that includes more references, criminal, motor vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. So GovHR will keep moving along after that. Also, when we're done with the interviews, I have the results of the right fit assessment that you all participated in about work styles. That will help you certainly understand the candidates better. And we also, if you decide to make a choice tonight, or you want to discuss the candidates, I just urge you to mention the positives. And we all have, there's other things that are not positive about myself, for example, but I like it when people talk about the positives, and it's no different for the candidates, especially because this is such a public setting. Last, there's some suggested second round interview questions, and they're tailored a bit to kind of make sure we touch on things that these candidates bring to the forefront. But it's your process, Mayor and Council, so feel free to change them up any way you like. This is supposed to be more informal. After all, they're both qualified. They have very good experiences and knowledge. It's really the chemistry now, how the fit feels to you. So something that's too scripted might miss something. So please, I think you can feel free to ad lib. With that being said, you will be in a position, I think, tonight to get down to some brass tacks if you choose to. I think Attorney Albright has volunteered to bring forward some information about employment agreements. And there's some questions here that make sure that we see if we're on the same planet. The second one under closing is, are there any compensation and benefit needs or requests that we should consider? So it's trying to ferret out if there is anything unique that we wouldn't otherwise expect. In your earlier information about each candidate, there's information on what their last current compensation was annually. So that will be a guideline as well. So that's it, kind of in a rapid fire fashion. Anything that I can clarify?
Yeah, I need a copy of that because you took it back and everybody still has theirs. I'm not
Yep.
the one who was obedient.
No, we were just looking for you. Which one is yours?
Probably this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Good catch. Well, good. That's about all I know then. I wait to see how you want to handle it.
Okay, so what time does it start now? It's almost 6 o'clock.
Well, if no one else had anything to say, I just recommend we recess till 6 then when we start, and, because I wouldn't mind reading some of the information that was here.
Okay, does everybody agree with Councilman DeMonico? Recess until about 6 o'clock to give a brief overview of what we have in front of us?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So we're gonna do a recess for about almost 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll start the interview process at 6. So if anybody in the audience have any additional questions, if you wanna write it down and hand it to us to ask the interviewer, we will greatly appreciate it. So we'll be doing a recess until 6
All right, sound good.
for our special meeting. And we are about to start with our interviews with Ms. Elkdoom at 6 p.m. Before we start, does anybody in the audience have any additional questions that we can add, that you would like to ask? You can give it to Linda Lentz and she'll pass it to us. We also ask for you to respect this process by turning your phones on silent, and if you have to speak, please step out so we can remain to have order in the city council meeting. Good evening, Ms. Doom. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. Can you pull your microphone a little bit closer up so we can hear you?
How's that?
Better.
Sounds better.
Too loud?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do mine too. And Mr. Cotton, can you turn yours on, please? Before we get started, did you have anything to add before we get started, Mr. Cotton?
Well, before you is a lot of information, as I mentioned earlier, plus some draft questions. There's 16 here, so there's 4 council members. If you wanted to take one each, then you'd end up with 4 each by the end of the night. But as I said, ad-libbing is great too, and you might have some suggestions from the audience. So we have roughly an hour allowed for this, but, you know, it's ish. So it could be 55 minutes, it could be an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay, I think I'm gonna start the interview with asking the first question, and then we're gonna also continue it. We're gonna do it the same way when we did your first interview. I asked the first one, then we did Mr. Curley, and then I think we did Ms. Lucido, and ended with Carrie DeMonico. And I'm gonna probably ask you 2 questions first, and then in the same order I just said. And then we'll ask a question that are all these the same? Then we'll ask a question from the residents as well who had a chance to meet you the other day.
Want me to look at them? Oh, I got you.
Okay, we got a couple of them. Did you guys get, how many did you guys get? Did
Oh, I
you
just
get
passed
any?
them all.
Just gave them all to you.
Yeah, we just gave them all
Okay.
to you.
Okay, you can do that, because I thought you guys wanted to ask them too. I'm gonna give all of us a chance to ask an additional question. Okay, let's get started. Now, I know you guys went on a tour yesterday of the city, correct?
Yes.
And by doing that, touring the city of Eastpointe and knowing the history of what you read and researched about Eastpointe, what kind of ideas came to mind when you did the touring and the things that you know about Eastpointe? If you started tomorrow, what would you start on first? And what ideas would you start working on?
Thank you for that question. What I saw was a little bit more than what I took a look at myself. I came up the day before. I drove around as much as I could in the city. And I'd just like to say that I found the city incredibly charming. Love the architecture of the, compact homes and how well kept they are. And also taking a look through the commercial districts and looking at a combination of road repair, road construction, of course, sitting through the council meeting the other day. And I learned quite a bit about where you are with your water and sewer and testing and lead, a little bit more than I had read about. And I also am aware that you've got some areas that they were built a little bit earlier in the 40s and 50s, and they're showing a little bit of wear and tear. And That's to be expected of any community that's a little bit older. The days before we had the zoning and sign ordinances and a lot of conformity, you have those kind of buildings that are a little bit, some are set back further than others, and the signage, and, taking a look at that and really kind of seeing what we could accomplish. I looked through the DDA area also, saw the wonderful streetscapes, and that's really very attractive for the community, and continue with that kind of theme throughout the community to really brighten the entire community. And of course, as some businesses come and go and buildings come down, then that's an opportunity to use the existing zoning that we have and really help develop some of the areas that are a little bit more tired. So I was quite impressed with the community.
So part of the question was, what kind of ideas came to mind as far as if you started tomorrow? What would be your first goal?
Well, if I started tomorrow, my first goal would be to get to know all of the employees, get to know the community very well, be involved with groups, with the chamber, understand as much as I can, not only about the community, about the area, and what type of opportunities are there for us to work together, whether it's through the county, through our neighbors. We're always looking for ways to stretch our dollar and do more good things in the community. So if you were to ask me to say the first 30 days, I would concentrate very, very heavily on getting to know and understand all of the departments, the budget, reviewing with our finance director, getting to meet everyone, and then using that as a platform to develop some ideas and processes as we go forward to bring back to council on how we can start to make some changes in the city.
Okay. My second question is, I want to know, how do you motivate people?
I motivate them because I'm motivated. I absolutely love what I do. It's a profession that I jumped into wholeheartedly, and I've not left it in over 26 years. I find that my enthusiasm gets other people enthusiastic with me. And, just working with people and having respect for what they bring to the table and taking their ideas and blending them and looking for new ways to really improve or enhance the community. I get very excited about that, and that kind of really spreads to the employees that get excited with me. And so, good teamwork and good cooperation and respect is very important to me, because I respect what our employees bring to the table. And I'm always looking for opportunities for us to have creative thinking and, what can we do to make the city better, and what can we do to enhance the quality of life for people. So I like to bring everyone together and brainstorm and work as a well-oiled team, if you will, because that's what really makes a difference as we're going forward. Not one person, but all of us together.
Thank you. I'm going to do a question from the residents. And a resident wants to know, what office management software are you proficient at using?
Well, the regular software that comes with most computers, but I'm very familiar with BS&A software. It is a program that I used when I was a tax assessor. Was very impressed with it, and then as they started to expand and branch out into the other departments and provide programs and interactions with them so that they could communicate together. That was a program that I understand you're using, and it was one that I also implemented when I was in Huron Township, because we were as so many communities are, a program goes down and you go out shopping for a new program, and suddenly you've got 4 or 5 different ones, and the platforms don't communicate very well, or they no longer have service. So, during really economic hard times, it was important that we allow people to work as seamlessly as they could and be productive, and so we went to the BS&A platform. I've also worked on the Tyler Technologies platform, which is known throughout the country, and that one is also equally good, and I've implemented that in a few communities.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be the one to ask a software question.
Well, the residents beat you to it. I'm going to ask you to ask her 2 questions.
Sure.
Mr. Curley, and then you can pick a question from the residents as
Oh.
well. So that can be our third
All right.
question, can be.
Okay, question 1, what would be your steepest learning curve related to this position?
I don't think it'd be too much of a jump off the cliff, but, I'm from Wayne County, which is next door. I would just need to learn as much as I can about Macomb County and the leadership and the county leadership, and get to know the folks there as I did in Wayne County, and how we can be of benefit to one another and how we can help each other. So the curve is there, but it's not a really steep one.
Okay. Second question, can you describe the difference between a manager and a leader, and what does your style fit into these definitions?
To me, a manager is someone who simply manages people and gives them directions, tells them what they need done. Leadership is different. It is providing the support to help people to be the best they can be, to empower them to excel at their positions, and to also to be the person they can turn to when the decisions need to be made, that we can work together on just improving whatever it needs to be improved. So I'm a leader. And if you were to ask me my style, it would be one of collaboration and teamwork.
Okay. This next question is from one of our citizens. What do you think the biggest strength of a city manager should be?
The ability to work with people.
Uh-huh.
Be available, not only naturally to mayor and council, because I work on your behalf, but receptive to the community, available to our staff, and also be very visible. Be an active member of the community, active part of many of the things that the community has, the events. Just be visible, be open and available. I have an open door policy, and so I invite people to come in and see me. Sometimes they can't. I might have a meeting. I always ask people to call ahead if they could. But there are many people that I've surprised that have stopped by to request a meeting, and I've invited them right in to sit down and tell me what's on their mind or what thoughts they have. So just being open and receptive and communicating well with people is very important.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we're going to turn the next set of questions to Councilwoman Sarah Lucido.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question really quick that the audience gave me first. And it says, are you connected with anyone working for the city of Eastpointe, or do you have any family members or friends working for the city of Eastpointe or living in the city of Eastpointe?
No, I don't.
So my first question for you is, what is your philosophy of customer service, and how would you impart this throughout your team? Oh,
Customer service to me is being receptive to the community, receptive to all of our employees. Often I'll have people call and they'll leave a message or questions, or they'll come into the office and we may sit down together and I'll listen to what they have to say, take notes. And what I do is I always return phone calls. I always reach back out. I will tell a person when I will call them, ask them when the best time is, when the best phone number, time of date, time of the day. And even if I don't have the answer for them at that point, they will receive a message from me letting them know that I'm working on it, I've gotten to the bottom of it, I've answered their questions for them. So just that, it comes back down to being receptive and communication, and the courtesy of returning phone calls and returning messages or emails. There's nothing worse to me than people who ask you a question or have some concerns and a city manager doesn't get back to them. We'll always get back to them.
and then my next question is, do you have any reservations about serving as our next city manager?
No, I don't.
It's good.
Councilman DeMonico.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks again for coming out tonight. And I think I figured this would happen, so I was trying to be prepared. You answered a lot of my questions already. So I'd ask, though, how'd you fit in then earlier with the Eastpointe's leadership team when you went around? How was that experience? I think we touched a a little bit maybe on it, but if
Yeah,
you
it was-
could expand on that.
It was very good. We actually had, some of us had a lot in common.
Yeah.
Having worked in other areas and crossed over and working in different counties and similar experiences. So I felt it went very well. I was very impressed.
Okay. Thank you. And then this is also a community question, and also a question I was thinking about asking too. What
Yeah.
sets you apart from other candidates for the position?
Well, I'm enthusiastic, for one. You know, I've had a lot of experience, and many people fall into government. I jumped in with both feet. I was so impressed with the leadership of my own community. When I was living there, that was the city of Taylor, and what they were doing on behalf of the community and how they were enhancing it. And I knew I wanted to be a part of that, and I wanted to be in a position that I could make a difference also. And so I embraced, you know, joining government, and I've had a number of roles. I started out in the clerk's office, so I certainly understand elections, and wow, they're a lot of work. And I've served as a treasurer, and I've served as an HR director, and so and I've been a tax assessor and a residential and commercial appraiser for municipal government. So my experience in government is not simply just being this or being a city manager. It's very broad, and I've had the opportunity to work with so many departments hand in hand as we go forward, and so I feel that just really makes me very qualified. And I think it's also important that I started as an employee and then became a department head. And as those years were going and I was gaining more and more experience, I put myself through school and finished my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. And also, I'm a certified public manager through Saginaw Valley State University. It's a specialized program. And that was all as I was going up, learning more and becoming more skilled. And then, eventually I became a city manager, and I've been managing communities for 11 years. And I enjoy it greatly because I enjoy, truly, this comes from the heart. I really, really enjoy making a difference and being a part of a community, making it better, not only for today, but for tomorrow too, for future generations. That's what drives me, and that's what motivates me.
Thanks. And you brought up elections. What do you think of ranked choice voting, or do you know anything about it, I guess?
I read about, of course, I've read the papers, and I read about the, how you've incorporated this. And then I found it very interesting that I read more about there's cities in New York that are starting to utilize the ranked, voting. And then as I was telling the management team, I was just reading an article recently. They've approached this in Anchorage, Alaska, and talked about, this appears to be the way that it, many municipalities are going. So I don't really have an opinion one way or another. I've never experienced it myself, but I did read the reason for it and, how it worked. And it's interesting that so many other communities are starting to also follow that method of voting.
Yeah, I think it's exciting, so. Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm all set for now if you wanted to do another round of us or something, or whatever you wanted to do.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question. Correspondingly, how do you see your fit with the city of Eastpointe City Council?
I like what I see. I enjoyed talking with you the other day, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry I didn't have as much time to speak with you as I wanted to, but sitting back as an observer and watching how you conducted your meetings, I was extremely impressed. Not all meetings are conducted as well as yours. And so it's obvious that you have respect for each other and you have courtesy towards one another, and as a city manager, that's very important. I've worked in communities where meetings are a battleground. And, once you've experienced a number of those, you're very, very appreciative when they're not. So I think the fit would be a good one.
Thank you. Now, you came from a lot of communities. I'm looking at your resume from Alaska, North Carolina, Oxford, North Carolina, West Virginia, New Boston, Milan, Michigan, LaSalle, Michigan. You have a lot of experience in different areas.
Yeah.
And since Eastpointe is growing in population and different backgrounds, how would you bring diversity into the city of Eastpointe with events and things like that? How would you bring more diverse events and ideas to the city of Eastpointe?
Yeah,
Make
that's
sure
a,
everybody's well represented in the city.
right, right. That's a good question. I have to say, you kind of caught me there. Thinking about the events that would bring more diversity, I know we created some very unique events in the communities that I worked in to bring people back downtown, bring people back together again. I don't know whether they were meant for diversity or just reaching out to the entire community as a whole to bring them. In North Carolina, we had a hot sauce festival. They grow a lot of hot peppers there. So we brought a lot of people together and brought them into the community for a festival on hot sauce. And, you know, we've had a ball drop, like the New York style ball drop in a mountainous area, bringing people in. So, you know, I wouldn't say it's diversity so much as just trying to gather the community together as one, as, you know, as a whole, and bring them together for events that reach out to everyone.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna go back and give everybody one last question, if you know, if you would like, starting with Mr. Curley.
Okay, well, you know you're going to be asked this question. You always are when you're applying for a job. Why are you the best candidate?
I think I'm the best candidate because I'm well-rounded. I've had a lot of experience, extremely enthusiastic. I like what I see very much. I enjoyed meeting the management team, watching all of you in action and listening to the questions that the community had. And you take that all together with the experience and the understanding that I have of government, and I feel I'd be a very valuable asset to you.
Good, thank you.
Welcome.
Ms. Lucida?
Are there any compensation or benefit needs or requests that you would want us to consider in relationship to your candidacy?
Anything unusual? Or,
Any like, yes, unusual, I would say.
no?
Okay.
Mr. DeMonico?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't recall if we did talk about it the other day, but I was just curious, why'd you leave Valdez? Why'd you leave Alaska?
I had a 2-year contract.
Okay.
And so after the 2 years, and starting to turn into a popsicle,
Okay.
it got a little cold there, a little icy and cold. You know, we talked about my coming to, and when I say we, I spoke with the council and the mayor. We had a number of phone conversations about what their needs were. They had gone through quite a few city managers, and they were getting pretty weary, and they had a lot of projects that needed completing that were kind of just hanging there. And we talked in detail about what it was that they needed from me, what I could do for them, and then I told them if I need 2 years. I can accomplish these projects for you in a 2-year period. 1 year would have been too short to be able to complete some major projects. One of our projects was an $83 million harbor and marina. So that was a massive project that needed to be completed, and it was completed on time and under budget. So I was extremely proud of that. Also, I also trained my assistant to step into the position. So I was working one-on-one mentoring an employee from within who lived there permanently to be able to step up into the position. So it wound up being a mentorship and also working on a number of initiatives for them, looking at succession planning, you know, employee retention. One of our biggest issues was housing. We could hire people, but we had nowhere to put them. Housing was so limited and so expensive, and how do we recruit good people and have them have somewhere to live and be able to support their families? So we paid very high salaries, but the high cost of living kind of nibbled away at that a bit. You know, it wasn't as impressive as it appeared to be. So we accomplished all of our goals within that 2-year period. And so we shook hands, and then I stayed for the summer. I had told everyone, family and friends, that I was, going to be leaving after my contract expired in the 2 years. And then suddenly I had a flood of everyone, and people I didn't even know were suddenly at my house saying, please don't leave yet. We're coming up to have the Alaska experience. So I kept my place through September so that all of these folks could come and visit. So it was kind of a revolving door, and it was a bit crazy there for a while. But it was also good because I was able to stop in City Hall and answer any questions and see if there were any transition issues, so it was really nice to be there at the same time.
It's funny you brought up the popsicle. 2 years ago, I went to Alaska for a wedding, and I was just planning on bringing a bunch of warm clothes, and then my wife was like, it's in the 70s, right? You probably don't need jeans and hoodies and stuff, winter coats. I'm like, oh, so I ended up wearing shorts the whole time in Alaska. Was not expecting that. So
You were in
I was there in the one warm month, I think, right?
Yeah, there are 2 good months. There maybe 2.5 if
August,
you're really fortunate, and after that, it's all over
Yeah.
for the year.
All right. Did you want to talk about any of your other positions before that too? How was, Oxford and Princeton then, your experience there, and, any other things you wanted to bring up from those positions, any projects or anything?
Well, in Princeton, my biggest goal that I was tasked with by council was downtown revitalization.
Okay.
And like many older communities, it really had 2 downtowns. It had the old historic downtown, and then it had the second branch that kind of built up that had the fast foods and the Kroger and, all of that kind of a downtown. They wanted the original downtown to come back to life, and it was pretty tired and worn out. And we had a museum at the far end of it that wasn't even open very often. People didn't know it was there. So we needed to do quite a bit. We had to kind of recreate the entire downtown, and it started with us, with the city. I made it very clear, I was beating the drum because I get very enthusiastic and excited, but it started with city property. And I said, we cannot expect people to keep their buildings clean and their properties in good shape if we aren't doing it ourselves. So we went on a major cleaning spree: tree trimming, shrub trimming, power washing, painting. We, put in benches, and we put in new signage, and we just I talked to every single business owner and asked what I could do to enhance their business. What could the city do on their behalf? And so working together, when I say working together, I was so appreciative and so thankful that because I spoke so much, and I spoke at the chamber, and I spoke at the Rotary and at the senior center, and told them, what our thoughts and ideas were. And so many people joined. The grassroots movement really helped. Seniors joined, college kids, high school kids, all joined in together to make a difference. And we had 2 colleges, one in the downtown that I helped locate down there, which really was a boom to the downtown. And then we also had a college, a university down the road in another community. Their art students came and helped us paint murals, just colorful and fresh and friendly. And our people our firemen, even our policemen joined in, and they got paintbrushes out and rollers to make a difference and really beautify the community. So it was really exciting to me to see how we brought so many people together. And because of that, one of our business owners bought the old theater downtown to renovate it. And we had tours of, what it looks like now, which was pretty run down. And the old days, the photos were there. And what really resonated with me is when I had a senior couple who came down and said, we want to be a part of this because this is where we had our first date. This is our history. And so we were getting that kind of input from the community saying, I remember when, and I really care, and I want it to come back. So just kind of putting it all together with a facade grant improvement and knowing that the city was going to be their partner and reaching out to the business owners, it really gave the impetus for investors to go ahead and take a second chance and take a look at those buildings and buy some of those buildings and start to renovate them. Okay. And then pretty soon, we were seeing renovation efforts that were not in the downtown district. Others were saying, well, that looks so nice. I really should clean my building up. I really should paint my building. You know, this area looks so spiffy and so great. City, is there anything you could help us with? You know, so that was something that was very near and dear to me, to be involved in a project that large.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. Great answers. Appreciate that.
Can you hand me those
sure.
additional questions that the residents had to ask? I'll add.
Yeah, we asked some of those.
Yeah, we asked a couple
I don't know if we asked them all, but.
We just got one. Each one person. I think this was just a comment that a resident wrote, that we need a strong person who can balance personality conflicts. And how would you do that? I'm gonna turn that statement to a question. How would you balance personality conflicts?
Well, it depends on who the persons are and what their conflicts are. So I try and get to the bottom. If people aren't working together very well, I try and understand what's going on. There's always going to be a little bit of conflict, and people have pressures and they have deadlines, but actual conflict that really interferes with doing a good job, that needs to be addressed. And so primarily the conflict that I've encountered has really dissipated when they knew that I cared about all of the individuals, what their stresses were, what was causing them their grief. Is it a, incompatibility of personality? Is it a conflict because there are more dollars going to one department than the other and the other feels they need it? So, I try and get to the bottom of what the conflict is. Is it just a personality or not, or is it something else? And so I do address it, and I do set expectations, and I expect them to conduct themselves accordingly, and I do so by being the lead. I just feel that we're here for a reason, and we're here to do important work, and there's no room for conflicts. So it's got to be nipped in the bud. It's got to stop, and people need to work together, and I'll get to the bottom of how we're going to work together very well.
Okay. I'm gonna do some closing questions because it's 6:30. That opens. So if I ask you some questions, it leaves more time if you have some questions for us too.
Sure.
And if the attorney has to speak, or Mr. Cotton, so we can make sure that we get the next interview on time.
Okay.
So one of the questions I'm going to ask for a closing question is, how did you get inspired to get into this profession?
I was a volunteer. I felt that, I'd heard so many people grumbling about our community. And if any of you know anything about the city of Taylor, we went through a very hard economic time. We were at the point where houses were selling, far below their market value, and people would just say, well, I don't want to live in Taylor. And we had a new mayor come in who actually was a hometown person, but he ran for mayor. And he wanted to make a difference, and he brought in people that helped him make a difference. And I said, I'm not going to sit here and complain. I'm going to get involved. And so I became involved, and I worked with the Historical Society, not only as their secretary, but hands-on with hammer, nails, and paintbrush, which I'm often seen in that, working, because I enjoy it. Together, a group of us renovated the one-room schoolhouse. They have a park that they developed called Heritage Park in Taylor. And they have a one-room schoolhouse, and then they moved a church from a commercial area, and we renovated that also. And when I say renovated, we tried to keep it as natural as we could, but just got to really throw myself heart and soul into making a better community. I wasn't willing to sit and listen to people grumble. I said, if you want to make it a better community, you have to get involved. And so that's how I really got involved, and I started attending council meetings and paying attention to what the leadership was doing to enhance the community, the growth and development, commercial growth. At that time, the mayor was very adamant that he was going to have an 18-hole golf course built, a community golf course. And a developer was just as adamant that he was going to put in an industrial park. So I really got involved because it was literally in my backyard. And so I was really involved in listening to, all of the negotiations that they had and how they came to a wonderful compromise. And each party got what they wanted. The mayor got his golf course, and in turn, they worked together to trade parcels of property that the city owned for other parcels, so he could have his industrial park in an area that was perhaps better suited for that. And just watching the negotiations and what was happening and how they were helping shape the community, it just got me so excited and so enthusiastic that I joined government.
Sounds good. This question isn't on here, it's my own question.
Okay.
With us going through the medical marijuana, how do you see that fitting in Eastpointe on your, personal experience with different communities? I don't know if you had communities that have had medical marijuana facilities. And us going through the ordinance right now and looking at putting it here in Eastpointe, how do you feel about seeing that in this community? Do you think it fits, or if you think it does fit, what are your comments or suggestions or ideas and things like that?
Yeah, we've had the opportunity in other communities to have recreational marijuana, to have medical marijuana. I don't have an opinion as far as the usage of it. I've seen how it's been so beneficial to people that have long-term illnesses, and it's really made a difference in their health. So I recognize the attributes of having medical marijuana. I don't believe that it's going to be a big moneymaker as far as tax dollars for the communities, and it's kind of portrayed as that. We had a lot of people come in for recreational and medical marijuana in Valdez, and it really did not increase business. It did not enhance business in any way. I know in the early stages when the state first, voted to allow for medical marijuana, a lot of communities thought, well, this is going to be a real moneymaker. We'll have taxes from, this type of stores. I don't believe that to be true, but I'm also not against having medical marijuana dispensary here in the community, especially if it can help people that really need help, that have physical issues, or have long-term diseases that are very important. But I wouldn't rely on it as a real tax incentive for the community.
Thank you. Next question, if offered this position, what steps would you need to take before you advise us if you accept?
I would have to take a look at the offer and read it through, and then advise you shortly after.
Okay, well, we'll be talking about that shortly. Do you have any questions for us, or do you have any closing comments after that?
The question I have, and each of you may have a different answer, but I'll put it out as a general question. What would you like to see in the first 6 months with your new city manager? What would you like them to tackle immediately? What's your important projects that you need to be addressed right now?
Well, what's important right now to me to be addressed, all of us will have our different ideas, is the lead sewer lines that we just, were talking about last night, and how we can get more funding from the state to help us pay for those things.
Okay?
And so we can have clean water, and then, of course, always crime, and then the tax reversion houses that we currently own, and how we can make money off of that, because we're sitting on a lot of money, and it's almost time for us to buy up more homes, and I don't want to sit on a whole bunch of houses that could be given to, or sold, let's say sold, to potential renters, residents, veterans, or et cetera.
Okay.
And so those are some of my ideas that I would like, the next city manager to start thinking about, and also have plans and resources in the next 6 months, how they're gonna go forward. Make a plan. I think we did that with Mr. Cotton when he worked here. We set a chart, and we also had the residents come out and talk about what they wanted and also what we wanted. And then you start, from like one, I think it was numbered. And because I don't want us to just tell you what we want the residents to also tell you what they want to see out of you as well. And we look at those things, and you come back to us and let us know where you're going to start, what your goals to implement what we need from you. and just, you know, set some goals with the directors and how they're gonna help you do those things as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilman Crowley?
As I said before, to find out if we've knocked on every door in Lansing or Washington DC to get more funds for local streets. I know there's a limit right now of getting funds, but if there's a door we haven't knocked on, and if there's somebody that we haven't talked to, we need to find out who that is and what door that is, and to find out, to get our local streets so that you can actually drive on some of them. That would be my priority.
Yeah, I understand. I drove on a number of your streets today.
I need not to say anymore.
Ours
Thank you.
aren't that bad.
Yeah,
There's
we're
other
number
cities
4.
that's worse.
There are other cities that are much worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if it's elected, you will be sitting with other, like he was saying, people up in Lansing. Me and Mr. Cotton did that actually today with State Representative Kevin Hertel and Senator Paul Wino to talk about some certain grants and money that they have, you know, the state can offer us and things like that. So if selected, you will be also included into that conversation as well. So I'm glad he brought that up. So we're gonna continue with questions from that same question you asked all of us, to Ms. Lucido.
So I think that in the first 6 months, there's a couple of things. But first, I would say just building a relationship with all of us and all of the administration at City Hall, because without having that good working relationship, it's a lot harder to get things done to move forward. So I would definitely say to probably, in my opinion, that would be the number one first thing I would like you to accomplish. Secondly, I agree with everyone else. Infrastructure throughout the whole state of Michigan, getting funding for infrastructure, coming up with some sort of plan, working with our Department of Public Works Services to come up with a long-term plan on how we should move forward with our road repairs, sewer repairs, replacing lead sewer lines, and so forth.
Yeah, I'd say getting to know everyone in the community, especially the department heads and everybody that works for the city. Just, you know, go around to the different buildings in the city. I'd want you to focus on that for sure, because I'd hope that you stick around long-term if we do hire you. So I'd want you to definitely build the relationships right away, and as you do that, you'd know what our goals and initiatives are at that point, and, you know, I think that'd be my number one thing, and we'd just go from there.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. I know everyone has priorities, and I appreciate you sharing them with me.
You have any more questions you want to ask us?
I don't have any more questions. I will share with you that I've been, just like you, knocking on doors. And when I was in Wayne County, I spent quite a bit of time with our county officials, with the MEDC, looking for dollars and how we're going to bring businesses into the community and working together just for the good of the entire area. You know, I wanted to say it was all for my community, but we know that, and this is true of every county, that if a region is strengthened, we're all strengthened. And if business comes in, and even if sometimes we do everything we can to bring it to us in our community, having it nearby and having business start to expand or new business, it just gives so many more opportunities to all of us. And we had, you may remember Vistion went into Van Buren. And, you know, we lobbied very hard for Vistion to come into Huron Township, but we didn't have the infrastructure at that time to entice them. And there was a lot of, you know, moaning and groaning about, I wanted it in my community and why couldn't we get it here? And it really did make the most sense for it to be where it was. And so I had to remind a lot of my colleagues that by bringing in something that large with such a large number of jobs and people coming in, that benefited all of us, because some of them were going to live in our community. And they weren't all going to live just right by work. We could all benefit from it. So I'm always looking for the benefit for the community, and I'm also looking for the benefit for the region. If we don't have the land mass or we don't have the size, how can we be really supportive to enhance our own community and have people come take a look, buy houses and commute, you know, 15 minutes or so. So, you know, I work with all of our leadership in Lansing, But I think they've really appreciated the fact that I wasn't beating the drum that it absolutely had to be in Huron Township, or I was going to, be frustrated or angry. I recognized how important it was for a county that was struggling to start to strengthen its entire, commercial base and industrial base. And we had quite a bit of development come into Huron Township through the county, working with them. Quite a few $1 million in road infrastructure that they helped fund to develop more commercial areas, commercial industrial around Detroit Metro Airport. So working with our county and our MEDC, I think we can have that same type of relation with this county and continue with our folks in Lansing and just make them aware that we're here and we have needs. And that counts for a lot when you're visible and when you're vocal. And they know that, you're there for a reason and we care about the community and we have needs too. Sometimes the squeaky wheel does get the grease, and it's good to keep that contact going at all times so that they know we're here and we're still looking for those grants and those matching grants and whatever. And I know federal grants are, I've applied for Tiger grants, applied with my neighboring community and got absolutely nowhere with them. They say they have millions upon millions of dollars, and yet we apply with projects and we're ready to go and we still don't get selected for them. So federal grants can be a little bit frustrating, but they're not impossible. In Valdez, I was able to secure a $2.8 million grant for flooding control through FEMA. And so they do have money and we can get it sometimes. We have to present ourselves in a way that makes it very important that we, show how we need that. So there are opportunities out there and I look for them. I look for every opportunity I can.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to say? I don't want to take anything.
I'd
you
just
wanna
like to
say.
thank all of you, Madam Mayor and Council and Mr. Cotton. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and I appreciate learning more about your community and meeting, your residents. And then me as a former appraiser, there's nothing I love more than to drive around town and look at everything. I just have that, I kind of like an inborn eye where I'm looking at all the development, I'm looking at the housing, I'm looking at parks. And I've really enjoyed doing that the last couple of days. That's been a real pleasure for me to get to know Eastpointe a little bit more. And my only regret is that I didn't get to know you sooner in my life. I mean, I would have moved here a long time ago, but without really knowing too far, most of us tend to settle really close to what we're accustomed to.
Yeah.
And so, we were in the southern part of Wayne County. We look around for our first homes, and you tend to look where the familiar is or where friends or family live. I just wish I had known more about Eastpointe then, because I can assure you I would have lived here.
That's an excellent closing statement.
Can I ask a question before we're done?
Yes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cotton for additional questions.
Well, after Elke said something like that today to the leadership team, we, I think, spent literally 10 minutes telling her about all the great restaurants in town. We kept coming up with, and then there's that place, and then there's that sushi place, and then and so, yeah, it is a great town. So this question, I want to get on the record because I didn't ask it earlier, and we know we asked about compensation in Valdez, and I have that, but what was your compensation in North Carolina when you were in Oxford?
My compensation in Oxford was about it had to have been about $110,000.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I close out, I want to say thank you for even coming a day before the tour and doing your own research throughout Eastpointe. I really like that, being proactive and showing initiative already. I really like that. And I think we're going to probably give, after we hear the second person, we're going to deliberate on what we like, what we don't like, and things like that. You probably know how the process goes.
Sure.
And hopefully you hear something probably by tonight or tomorrow.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we give her a round of applause?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I love that color. Yes,
It's Jenny Blue,
I love it.
my favorite color.
You know, it's dark in Alaska till January, February right now. You can't get around without the lights.
LB, you were appointed by Jenny, weren't you, to the optometry commission?
Yep.
And you
Yeah.
should recognize our favorite color,
Ooh, yeah, well,
Jenny Blue. That's what I nicknamed it. Because if you see her, she's often wearing blue.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
And it's-
That's true.
Yeah.
She is, she was always wearing that
She always
color
was
blue.
vibrant blue, and I saw that, and I said,
Yeah, it stands out.
so it's my favorite.
I like bright colors too.
Stands out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe we're in a 10-minute recess, so if you guys want to get some water, stretch.
Okay. You convinced me to go to that. Thanks.
Just stand up for a minute.
Get pizza. Turn y'all microphone. In session, please make sure your phones are on silent, and if you have to have a conversation, please step outside so we can remain order in the city council chambers, please. Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, it's easy to remember your name, because if you get the first name wrong, the last name is the same, so how you doing, Mr. Thomas?
Oh, fine. Sometimes people have said it 3 times, too.
I'm glad your middle name was not Thomas. That would be too much for me. Thomas, Thomas, and Thomas.
It's Edwin.
So how this is going to work is similar to how we did it the first time. I asked you 2 questions. It goes around council. The only addition to it is that the residents had wrote some questions for you on these green cards, and we're just going to, add them to our questionnaire so that we can give them a voice as well, too. And then at the end, of course, we let you ask us some questions and end it with a closing statement. So easy, right? So, yes, I'm going to start off by asking you a question. Now, you guys did some touring through the city of Eastpointe the other day with Mr. Cotton, and also talked to some directors and things like that. Knowing the history of what you read about the city of Eastpointe and touring the city, what kind of ideas came to mind when you saw those things in the tour and the history that you know? What kind of things came in mind that you would say, once I get started, that those are some things I'm going to bring to Eastpointe?
Well, I have enjoyed the tour that I had of your city and having an opportunity to meet with your directors and tour your facilities, and I was very impressed about how proactive you've been with the recession, having to deal with the issues regarding the state.
I'm sorry, excuse me, can you pull the microphone up a little bit, sir?
Closer. All right. Is that better?
Yes.
Hear me now?
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
I've been very impressed by how proactive you've been looking at your audit and looking at your budget, how you've been proactive in regards to dealing with the issues of the recession, dealing issues with the state and revenue sharing. As I looked at that, I looked at some of the examples of things I've done in the past. I would potentially spend my first 100 days here getting a feel for the department directors, all the infrastructure issues that you're dealing with. And I got a list of quite a few last night, listening to your director of public works. I was very impressed he did all that standing on the fly. That was impressive. Spent a great deal of time with your finance director, getting a feel for things, and meet with your department directors and tour their departments and get a feel for their operations. Right off the bat, I would begin to see that how we can continue to provide the same level of services as vacancies become available. See if there's an opportunity to merge more responsibilities to have some potential savings in that. Secondly, I've done 5, 10-year strategic financial plans, long-term strategic plans that I've done in other organizations. I would see what type of long-term plans you've done here and see how that fit with other experiences I've had in the past. During my tenure as city manager in another community, which is very similar to yours, we were dealing with limited financial resources. We were 98% built out, and we were constantly trying to bring in potential developers. Some of the things that I've done in the past is I've done outreach and done issues with public-private partnerships. I had formed a partnership with a group called Renaissance Rock Island, where they were able to get federal funding to start building new housing in the downtown area for people to potentially live in who didn't have the opportunity to get loans. So assisted them. You have low income, you apply and you get qualified for it. During my time there, we built about 20 houses downtown. So that was something we were able to do, and it added to the tax base, and it gave people places to live, and it took the issue of constantly adding delinquent property owners and people having to pay rent. People owning properties, they become stable, they add to the value of the community. Some of the other type projects working with them that I was able to work with them to acquire the property that I was able to build our police facility on. So those type of public-private partnerships were very helpful to me being very creative to get things done. So just some examples.
Wow, I was going to go into this other question, but you answered it already. Tell us how you motivate people.
Well, one of the things that I've always lived by, I grew up around my, until he retired at the age of 80. And one thing I learned from him growing up is to lead by example. To begin with, never ask someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. Go around and find out the strengths and weaknesses of your days a week. Where I've hired 4 or 5 different directors, and I've been able to move them up internally because I helped them through training opportunities to be prepared to move up to that next level. So just a few of the things I've done. And finally, I have an open door policy. I have an open door policy if an employee wants to come and speak to me about anything of concern, something I'm not aware of, something they think is a potential big picture issue, that's something to think about, I'm open to that, and I schedule time for that. I want to learn what their duties are, I want to learn what they're involved in, and that helps me learn too, so I can address the issues to the council and also to the citizens of the community.
Sounds good to me. I'm going to ask you a question from one of the residents. What sets you apart from other candidates for city manager we may be interviewing for this position?
Well, I have 25 years of experience. I've worked at every level probably of government. I've been a budget analyst, a planner, an assistant to the city manager, an assistant county manager, and a city manager in 4 or 5 different states. I bring all those different ideas to the table if I got this opportunity. From working in right-to-work states, from working on the county level, to working with every type of union group to work out labor agreements. I've worked in cities that have been financially distressed, on the verge of insolvency, and brought them back to being solvent and building up their reserves through strategic financial planning and working with the budget. And I also do this job because I enjoy doing it, and I have the experience and the desire to do it. I'm sure the consultant looked at all my references, and I'm a self-starter. I am a 24/7 person. I wake up every day trying to find some way to improve things. And just a few of my things, I don't want to toot my horn too much.
Please do. It's your time to do that.
I see the opportunities in your community that I see your group, your employees and your citizens are already working hard to improve on. Last night I met people who live here, and every one of them talked positively about living here. I've been in places where I met citizens who didn't like where they lived. I met people here last night who want to live here, want to continue to contribute, want to find things to increase the quality of life in your community. In my experience, I've had the ability to go out and meet with citizens in town meetings. I've met with homeowners associations, find out what motivates them, find ways to get them, if they want to contribute in some way. And I developed those skills, and not only from running daily operations, but also working with citizen groups to help them, to motivate them, to help them want to help their community more.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the mic to Councilman Harvey Curley for questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Thomas, I'm going to ask you a question, first of all, that was submitted by one of our citizens. What do you think the strongest strength of a city manager should be?
I think the greatest strength is communication and transparency. In regards to communication, being able to be concise with the issues, concise with the recommendations, being available to explain them, and being proactive to the elected body, to the citizens, and also dealing with the media. Transparency. Don't give one person one message and give someone else a different message. And make sure everyone is up to date on something so no one feels as though they're being slighted in any way. So communication, transparency. Those are the two biggest things.
Okay. Where would you hit the ground running?
Well, as I said, my first 100 days, I would spend the time meeting with the department directors, getting the operations. My first 100 days, there's no excuse I shouldn't be able to meet every city employee, find out what they're doing, get a feel for them. And I know sometimes with shift work, I have to be willing to go to a different shift to meet the police officers, go to the different shift to meet the firefighters. But I put forth that effort so they can put a face to my name, so they know I'm around town and they can talk to me anywhere they want to about any issues of concern. Secondly, get a feel for the finances with the finance director, find out all the financial issues we have to deal with, begin to get a feel for all the issues in regards to revenue from the state, with the county. That would be something new I can learn, but I've learned that in other places I've worked in. And third, begin to develop a relationship with the mayor and the council. I don't let 2 weeks go by without having some sort of a meeting with the elected body. Some of you may be retired, some of you may be busy with work. I make myself available, not just the work hours, but after hours if necessary. And I'll come to you and meet with you if necessary. I'm available through email, text, FaceTime, face-to-face, phone call, and I make myself available at all times. Develop those relationships is the critical part of those first 100 days.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Describe the difference between a manager and a leader, and where does your style fit into that definition?
As I said before, a leader is someone that leads by example. Being able to see and have a vision for the community, being able to translate those issues to the community and to the elected body, outline why you're seeing it that way, and be able to explain it in a concise way. For instance, example, I saw your meeting last night, and it was very well done, but I had a habit of working with department directors doing a lot of PowerPoint presentations. You did an issue about street assessment. We should do PowerPoint presentations where we outline for everybody to see on the screen all the streets, how they've been assessed, rank them, and give them the recommendations why we're doing certain streets this year, the next year, and the year after that, so you can have a clear understanding. The red ones are the toughest streets, the yellow ones are intermediate, and the green ones we can wait longer on. Mm-hmm. So that's critical to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lucida.
Okay, this first question was from a resident. It was actually a comment, but Ms. Owens turned it into a question, so I'm gonna do the same. How would you deal with like personality conflicts, whether it be on council or with employees, that is actually causing like a disturbance where they're not being as productive as they possibly could be?
Well, every situation is different. Dealing with elected, I've had situations come up in my career. I had a member of elected body that got in trouble with some property that had fallen in repair and had code enforcement issues, and that person had ignored the code warnings, and I had to bring that person in, explain to them what was going on, and had to begin to work with them to try to bring the property in compliance and make that person be aware that because they're elected, they're held to a higher standard than the citizens in the community, and make them be aware that unless they brought the property into compliance, you risk it getting out to the media. It could potentially damage you politically, and it could also damage the community. That was one of the situations I had to work with. And I also had to inform the whole mayor and council that they'd be aware of it too, so they wouldn't be caught by surprise if it became a news story. That's one example I lived through. I was able to work through it, and we were able to get the property back into compliance. Dealing with employees, it depends on what the personal issue is. If there's an employee who's being passive-aggressive, acting up, I work with the department director to try to come up with some sort of a plan to, if it's something that we've given warnings about, there's no improvement on, I believe in progressive discipline. We go to the next step, to a written reprimand. Outline issues that person needs to improve on, and give them a certain period of time to get improvement on that. And most time during my career, an employee realizes they're being given an opportunity to turn things around. We're working with them, and most time they turn things around. In the event they don't, when we move to the next level of potential termination. And at that point in time, I've always felt that the employee is firing themselves, because we've given them an opportunity to approve. We have a clear plan. We've written it out for them. We tried to work with them. They couldn't turn it around. And in the end, this is the citizens' money and the citizen services we're providing.
Okay, my last question is about customer service. Like, what is your philosophy when it comes to like customer service, dealing with the residents that have complaints and things of that matter?
Well, as I mentioned, I have an open door policy, not only just to employees, but also to the citizens. There will be times that a citizen may come in regarding, I don't like the way something's happening with a code issue. They'll go to the department and say, I want to talk to your boss. At that point in time, I'll make myself available. If I'm not available then, we'll schedule a meeting. We'll bring them in. I'll have my director there. We'll go through it with them. We'll try to explain it and try to explain why we do things the way we do, to try to keep it from becoming a bigger issue where they don't show up to council meeting, making an issue out of it. So I try to be proactive in those issues. And when a citizen comes in with an issue of concern, they want to talk to me, I make myself available, but also bring in the director who has the history of the issue and the expertise, and we try to alleviate the situation.
All right, thank you.
Mr. DeMonico?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Could you tell us a little about Unalaska, or why you left, or any projects you've done, you did there that you're excited about?
Well, I'd been there for a year, and Alaska was as out in the Bering Sea. We had a population, we were on an island. You can only get on and off the island by flying in a plane. We were a population of about 4,000. It's the #1 fisheries in the world. During the fishing time at our processing plant, the population goes up to about 10,000. But we have people from all over the world coming to work there, different languages. But it's also a very remote area. We had a school, we had one grocery store, one recreation facility. I was working a great deal of hours all the time. My wife and children, it was very difficult for them because, you raise kids in the lower 48, they didn't have the high-speed internet, and they didn't have the cable TV type things they wanted to watch. And it became a bit of a strain after a year's period of time. And at that point in time, I had negotiated an exit to come back to the lower 48 to begin to look for some opportunities here. I negotiated to leave when my kids finished school. I left in good standing with the organization, and I wished them well. But that was a very particular situation where it was just, we all agreed as a family to go up there. My wife went up there with me to the interview, but it was very tough. She couldn't find an opportunity for herself, and it was difficult.
Okay. And then a question from the audience here, and one right up my alley about software. What kinds of different software have you used municipal-wise? And, are you familiar, with Microsoft Office, things like that?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with all the Microsoft Office products. Financial software, I've went through a major integration years ago when I was assistant county manager in Dougherty County. We switched over to PeopleSoft. We went through the whole migration, the training process, bringing people in, and that was a big undertaking. I've dealt with I can't remember some of the other software packages. I've dealt with 2 or 3 different, but I've done the migration over, so I'm familiar with them. I'm learned how to use different modules for Public Works and for HR, and brought them online and been involved in the training process. So I'm familiar with that. I haven't found out what type of financial package you have here yet, but I'm sure it's something I'll be familiar with.
Okay. All right, appreciate it. All right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Now, I see that you have worked a lot of different places, different states, like Macon, Georgia, Rock Island, Illinois, Alaska, Pinellas Park, Florida, and so on and so forth. Working in Eastpointe, the population has changed. It's getting more diverse. How, working in Eastpointe, can you bring those different groups of diversity together in different events and things going forward? How do you bring different backgrounds and experiences together in the city of Eastpointe through events and different ideas that you may have that you probably did in other places or not? Because I don't know the population and the background of the cities you came from, but coming to this city and knowing that population is growing, different diversities and things like that, what kind of ideas come to mind to bring different groups together?
Well, when I was in Rock Island, it was a very diverse community through religion and race. We did a lot of things in regards to doing town meetings where we go out to different neighborhoods and talk to people and find out issues we can address in their community. One of the things I did when we built our brand new police station, we had a community room up front where we had monthly meetings where we invited people in, part of our community policing program, to meet with citizens, homeowners associations, to talk about issues in your community. We try to be very proactive about things going on, and we wanted to create a safe space where they can come and talk to us and try to build some level of trust. Because in any community, no matter how good things are going, there's going to be one bad day when something happens, and you have to be proactive in regards to building those relationships. Something else I've done is I work with the different council members to have meetings in certain sections of town where they want to gather people, because sometimes citizens are hesitant to come to council meetings. It's very intimidating to them. They come up and see you sitting on the dais, and they see the cameras, and they see everybody looking at them. So they're kind of hesitant about coming to council meetings. So sometimes you have to be willing to go out and meet with them. Something innovative I did a very long time ago when I was assistant to the city manager in Rockville, Maryland. We did something called the Walking Town Meeting, where every time during the spring and summer, we'd map out a certain section of town that we outline we're going to walk, and we'd get up on a Saturday morning, we'd advertise it, we'd walk that neighborhood with me, the directors, and the council members. The citizens will come out and they'll talk about issues in their neighborhood, and we talk about things we can begin to improve on. And we do about maybe 4 or 5 of those every year, working with if there's a homeowner association, we work with them. If there's a neighborhood leader in that area, we work with them. And we try to rotate over a 2-3 year period. We try to hit every section of the community. That's a way to build up some sort of synergy, trust. It also gets you to see things you don't necessarily see when you're driving by in your car. So just some examples.
That's true. When people come out there, you don't know what people are going through or who they are until
Yes.
you meet with them and they come outside and you actually have that one-on-one.
Yes.
So I definitely agree with you. We're gonna go back around, and the council will ask you additional questions that may come to mind or which is set before us on paper. Go ahead, Mr. Curley.
Well, here comes a question that you're always asked. Why are you the best candidate?
I think I'm the best candidate because I have the years of experience to do the job. Because I've looked at your organization, the issues that you're dealing with, and I have experience doing exactly those same issues. The way you're structured, the way you're laid out, the financial issues you're dealing with, the redevelopment issues you're dealing with, doing more with less, team building. I think I bring the experience to be able to help with doing that. Last night, when your public works director was going through his litany of different projects he's dealing with, I have the experience dealing with street issues and coming out with a strategy for doing street repair. He talked about dealing with the potential lead issues. I've done a water filtration plant, upgrading pipes and bringing something online. So I have the experience able to do the job, and I would bring that many years of experience from multiple areas to your organization. And I'm very proactive and I work hard.
Okay, thank you.
Good answer. Ms. Lucido?
How did you get inspired to become a city manager?
When I went to graduate school, I knew I was going to be doing something in government. And I had potential two opportunities when I was coming out of graduate school. I had a potential internship in Washington, D.C. with a congressman, and an internship in the city manager's office in Georgia. Well, somehow, through some sort of, scandals happened in D.C. That congressman did something and he was no longer in office, so that fell through. So I took advantage of going to doing the internship in the city manager's office. And one of the jobs I was tasked with doing was going around and assessing all of the public facilities to see if they were compliant with the ADA. That was in the 90s when the first Bush approved the American Disabilities Act. So I spent all of my internship going around reviewing all our public facilities, outlining what we have to do to bring in compliance, coming up with potential costs, and coming up with a plan how to bring those properties into compliance in about 10 years. And I learned during that process that that little project I was doing was going to have a huge impact on the quality of life of people in that community. From being able, went out to the swimming pool where there was no walkways to come get to the pool, you had to step up to it, little things like that. And I made notes, wrote a comprehensive report on it, turned in my final report for graduate school, got an A on it. And I learned a lot by doing that it was such a great contribution that I did just as an intern for the community. And that's when I realized it's something I wanted to do. I can go back to other places I worked and say, I helped build that animal shelter that's still there. I helped build that police facility that's still there. I helped do those street repairs that are still there, and those roads are working great because of my contribution and the work I did there.
All right, thank you.
Mr. DeMonico?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What would you do, say you had there were a couple employees at the city just weren't getting along, there was something going on there. How would you handle like a difficult situation, between employees at the city? How do you go about?
Well, normally I try to start with some level of mediation, individually trying to find out what the issues are, working with the department director, of course, and try to find out we can find some way to work through it. Most of the time, you can sort through those issues. But there also have been times when I find out there could be some sort of bullying issue going on at work, where I find out there's one individual that's causing the potential problem, and I have to get proactive in putting out a plan for them to stop the behavior, things they're going to have to do to stop the behavior, that we're going to be observing it, and we take it very seriously. There's also been times when sometimes the two people don't get along, but it's not necessarily something either one of them is doing. They just have very different personalities. And they have to learn how to potentially coexist together and try to find some level of commonality. And sometimes it may take some time. We may sit down and talk about things they may need to try to find and have in common to build that. Because especially if they're in an apartment, they're in a closed area, they're in a cubicle next to each other. We got to work through that in order, especially if they're both, in addition to that, being very productive employees. And I don't want to lose either one of them. So mediation, work with them, trying to get through it. You can't mediate it. Progressive discipline, potentially someone may not be there because of that.
And so you told us a little about how you got into public administration. Was there any, see, you were like a budget analyst at Tallahassee, or you mentioned Rockville earlier, assistant to the city manager. Anything you recall from, those jobs that were interesting things you're proud of, or just like something you learned that you've just kept in mind at all your different places you've worked at?
I think my time when I was the manager in Macon, Georgia, I was told that they had financial issues, and I'd looked at the audits and the budget issues, and I knew there were going to be some challenges when I got there. And then when I got there, to my surprise, that no one was aware of, and some of the elected folks in there weren't aware of, we were making payroll with tax anticipation notes. And this was stunning to discover. That's what led to so many of the tough decisions I had to make during my time there, because we were on the potential verge of bankruptcy. That's why I had to do so many drastic things like right-sizing and redesigning the entire health insurance plan and looking to move some of the early retirees over to Medicare Plan B because we were on the verge of becoming bankrupt. That was one of the toughest times of my career. After my first month there, my former boss back in Doherty County, you want to come back and be assistant county manager? I haven't filled it yet, but I saw it as an opportunity to do something I'd never done before. And it was a lot of hard work. I had to bring in a brand new finance director who had many years of experience. In fact, he was originally from Michigan. And he was brilliant, so he was very helpful to me. We had to establish financial policies for the first time. We had to establish a reserve policy for the first time. But by the time I left there and went to Rock Island, the organization was solvent. We had a 30% reserve. And after the right sizing, we had a substantial amount of savings because we were losing police officers, so we were able to make some adjustments in their pay too, to deal with the retention issues. So that was probably the toughest career time of my life, but it was also the most productive.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Appreciate all your answers.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, as you know, the council is working on an ordinance for medical marijuana, bringing it to our community, our city. I don't know if you work with medical marijuana, recreational marijuana in other cities, but how do you feel like medical marijuana fits in the city of Eastpointe?
Well, I was involved in that during my time in Rock Island. That was when the governor of Illinois created zones where people could apply to become for medical marijuana, to be a cultivator or a dispenser. We got a zone. We had a group out of Denver come and present about potentially bringing it to our location. We had work session meetings with the public explaining what it was, what it would do. We had a parcel property that was in a light industrial area in the outskirts of town, away from everything, that we threw out an option to sell to them to develop. Actually, we really didn't pick up much resistance as people thought was going to occur, because I sent a group, my police chief, my director of economic development, my code enforcement people. They all went out to Denver and looked at the facilities, saw how they run. And when they came back and have my police chief saying this is safe and recommended it, having my economic development director saying this can be done properly in a safe manner, We approved it. They built a cultivation facility that supplied like 100 jobs. It's still there today. It's a very secure location. And now that Illinois is going toward recreational marijuana, it's in a prime position to go through the approval process of getting that 3% sales tax for when that we're able to buy in that way. We had a potential someone who wanted to do a dispensary, but according to the guidelines, they couldn't get the finance in order. They wanted money for me to do it, to assist, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So they went to another community instead of coming to us. So I've been through that process of bringing online a marijuana medical cultivation facility. Didn't get a chance to do a dispensary because they didn't have the financing to do it, and they were having trouble getting through the rigorous qualification process from the state. It can be done. It requires a lot of public meetings. It requires you to be proactive with your staff, getting them educated on what it is so they can explain to people, because there's a misperception about it in the sense that people think it brings crime. It can be developed in an area. It can be done securely, and it is a potential revenue source. But it's about selling it to the community and being how they feel about it at the very beginning.
Thank you. Do we have additional questions that we have from the residents? Can you pass it down for them? Thank you. Want to make sure I try to get to some of the residents' questions. I think it is, oh, this is the one that we didn't ask, that the resident wanted to ask you, is are you connected with anyone working for the city of Eastpointe? And do you have any family members or friends working for the city of Eastpointe or living in the city of Eastpointe?
No.
Okay. That wouldn't be a bad thing if you have family living here. Before I ask you some closing questions, does council have additional questions they may want to ask? No, go ahead. We have plenty of time since he's our last one. So I'm going to ask you a couple lasting questions, and I want to know, are there any compensation or benefit needs or requests that we should consider in relation to your candidacy?
Not off the bat. I've done other negotiations for salary and benefits. It all seems in line. I don't see anything out of the ordinary. But as we go through the negotiation process, I don't ask for anything. Well, let's just say everything I've asked for in the last 2 or 3 places that wasn't out of the ordinary.
Okay. If offered this position, what steps will you need to take before you advise us if you can accept?
Well, we offer me the opportunity. There'll be a period of negotiations, and it'll be depending on who you're assigned to do the negotiations for salary, benefits, moving expenses, things of that nature. And depending on that, I would be, I'm in a state right next to, so I'll be able to move fairly quickly. It'd be a matter of finding a place to live. That would take a period of time. I would most likely have to come back with my wife and look for places. Maybe even have potential to stay in a hotel for a while I come to work until we find some place. Relocating with 2 children, getting them in school. So I can't imagine it taking more than maybe 2 months or more. We have the holidays coming up, so that can add a little awkwardness to it. So negotiating a salary, working out when I can relocate, find some place to live, and get to work.
Okay. Now, do you have any questions for us as a council that you want to ask us?
Yes, to begin with, I had the opportunity to meet quite a few of your employees, walking around the building, talking to them. And I know the history of the past managers that you've had here, and I'd like to hear from you what you're looking for in the city manager going forward in the future.
Well, some of my priorities are, which probably equals to some of council, but my priority is actually seeing the priority of what council wants and the residents want, and putting forth a chart and putting goals together in the next couple, the first year or something like that, and trying to find resources to meet those goals. I think a lot of times we don't set goals and things like that. We just go by what we see, and then we come to a conclusion that we missed something because we didn't set out proper goals. So I would like the city manager to set out goals based upon what the elected body sees and wants, and also the residents, and come up with some type of solutions to those goals and those needs and those wants of the community. And go forth and bringing the city forward. Mr. Curley?
Well, my priority, I have a lot of them, but my top priority is the local streets. And as I said before, I just want to make sure that we've knocked on every door that's possible and talked to as many people as possible, either in Lansing or Washington, D.C., to see if we can't get more funds to repair our local streets. So that would be my top priority.
Ms. Lucido?
I think keeping a balanced budget is very important while trying to give back the most you can to the residents, especially when it comes to infrastructure issues, like you had heard at our meeting last night. Repairing roads, street repairs, lead pipe repairs, so on and so forth. But at the same time, managing to try to get as much funding as we can with keeping our budget balanced at the same time.
Mr. DeMonico?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see the manager just start right away building relationships with all the employees. Meet the department heads and meet all the employees throughout the city. Head to the DPW building, police department, the library, fire department. Just start building those relationships. You'll start to then, learn what, is important to city council as you do that. And I think just someone that can work well with people and, help manage everything throughout the city. Of course, there's a lot going on, and that's what I'd like to see in our next manager, someone that can do that very well.
Okay. Well, every place I've worked at, I've done annual goal settings with the mayor and council. There have been times I've brought in a professional consultant to help set goals. I've done it every place I've worked, and we set annual goals. It helps you see what you have in common. It helps you begin to prioritize for that next year. And also helps me in regards to things you can evaluate me on at the end of the year. And secondly, I use them as management tools to assign priorities to my department directors. So I see that as something that's been very helpful to me. And I've been in places where the council said they wanted to do it, and I got there, and they resisted it first, and then a year later get around to doing it, and they see the synergy of it all. It's a good building process, setting aside maybe 2 days to work on that, develop it, and get a vision of how you want your community to look. And also, you get an idea about the realistic things you can and can't do. You're not going to be able to do all the streets next year. This is why we're going to have to do these streets and why you're not going to be able to do these streets. It's not based on you like somebody, someone lives on that street. It's about the priority of those streets. So it's a very useful tool that I've used everywhere I've worked.
I thought last night we said we were doing all the streets next year.
I don't know if anyone can.
Yeah, right, yeah. I remember when I first came to council, a friend of mine gave me a book that was read, that she told me, she said, this will help you as a councilwoman. At the time I was. And she said, this is the same book Michelle Obama read. And the book talks about using the gifts and talents that's already, in the city or area that you're in. So what I would like to see a city manager do is utilize the gifts and talents that's already in the city before outsourcing or finding resources outside, and give people the ability to use their talents and resources. For instance, if we're doing contracts for businesses, try to find businesses within the city and give them the opportunities. Use the businesses instead of contracting with other businesses and give them the opportunity and things like that. Mm-hmm. Find the talents and the gifts that's already given to you and utilize on those things. Mm-hmm. So those are major things that I would like to see a city manager do when working for the city of Eastpointe.
Well, one of the things I've done with the Economic Development Department is you set aside time to go out and do those visits to different businesses and find out what the issues are. You don't want to find out a business is closing when you drive by and see the sign going out of business there. If you have some sort of issue by doing those outreaches, you find out something is happening in the business, something we can assist them with, some sort of infrastructure issue with the business or some sort. We try to be proactive in those things. So That's just some of the things we do. We don't hit every business, but we target certain businesses we want to do those visits to, and have that build up that relationship so we can find out what their needs are.
Thank you. Now, do you have any closing comments, statements, or things you want to say before this is your time?
Well, I would say in my first 100 days, my focus would be on coming to the organization and developing a relationship with the mayor and council, getting a feel for what your needs are, even getting in the car and driving around and seeing issues you have of concern, finding out the strengths and weaknesses of the department directors, finding out what their strengths are, I can help them enhance those, and find out the weaknesses, things I can help them better develop. And within those first 100 days, I'll have a full idea of who they are and how they can assist me in being successful here, because I can't be successful without them. First 100 days, because of the size of your organization, try to meet every employee, go on those different shifts and try to let them tell me something. They have a history of this place, and they can maybe, I may have some idea about something, and they may say, we tried that 5 years ago and it failed miserably. You don't want to go down that path again. So try to get that level of history they have to add to my knowledge base. Be outgoing, going to different community events so they know who I am, put a face to it. Get a lot of business cards and hand them out, make sure they have be able to make contact with me. I don't know what kind of community events you have. I've been in places where they do an annual veterans parade. They do a Halloween parade, or they may do some sort of Christmas event. Be available, going to those different types of events and be known and get to meet people. That transparency and being out there and communicating. So just a few of the things I do in my first 100 days.
Thank you so much. I was going to close it out with you saying that, but since you mentioned council, talking to us, seeing us, and how, we do our council meeting, correspondingly, how do you see your fit with the City of Eastpointe City Council?
Well, it was interesting watching your meeting, and I've seen a few others on YouTube. It's much better seeing in person. It's you cover a lot of issues. I would see myself potentially wanting to present things a little different long term. Like, for instance, I help with the department director with developing PowerPoint presentations. It makes it a whole lot easier to understand where you're bringing complex ideas. And I was looking around the room seeing how you even begin to set that up. So those are things I've done before. With street assessments, with infrastructure projects, when I'm going through zoning issues, being able to put it up on the screen, seeing where the property is and highlighting in yellow and seeing what the buffing issues you're dealing with. So how you present things. I tell people I try to put it on that 5th grade level. That may take some time to do it. I try to separate out work sessions in the beginning from things you're going to have approval. And I may have something as a work session, but I'm not going to push it on council to approve it that night. Work session, you have an opportunity to think about it, you vote on it the next week. Little things I've done very differently so you don't feel stressed. I've got to make a decision right now. So I felt a little of that yesterday. So go through the education process 1 week. You have time to think about it. You have time to follow up with me. You get any more questions, then you vote on it, doing that next time. So those are for big projects. I'm not talking about approving things like payroll or approving basic things like a purchase of equipment. I'm talking about big projects that you're looking at. So presentation, how it's put together and how it's presented to you. So you'll have a packet, you have the presentation, and also the citizens can see it as well. So how you present things, those are the things I've done in the past.
That's a great answer. Really great answer. Well, seeing as that no one has any more questions, Mr. Cotton?
Mr. Thomas, do you recall what your salary was in Rock Island?
My salary in Rock Island, I think it was around 156, 157 when I left. I came in at 140 and through salary increases and everything was around, I think, 156, 157.
And what was it in Valdez? Excuse me, in Alaska?
But that was a different situation. The cost of living was high up there. It was 170.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm looking on here, excuse me for 1 second, I'm looking on this expectation. Thomas. Never mind. Okay, I don't know why there's something else. Okay, Mr. Thomas, hopefully, if selected, you'll hear something either tonight by Mr. Cotton or tomorrow morning.
Okay,
We want to say thank you for coming out, because you live in Illinois right now.
correct.
And so you came out and had the tour and took time out to see the city of Eastpointe. You answered a lot of questions really good. You know a lot that you've seen, and you have a lot of background experience. And like I said before, tonight we're going to just talk about some of the things that we like, we don't like. And if we like you, you'll hear from us tonight or tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate being invited. One final thing I'd like to give you is, every place I go, I sort of outline sort of my first 100 days kind of thing. And sometimes things change once I begin, but just some basic
you.
outline I use.
Thank you, sir.
Look at a place and things I observe and start with.
Thank you.
Just something to review in case,
Okay.
you know, we get into a conversation, we start covering so many things, and I get talking, don't write everything down, so I just throw it all out for you to have to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to do a 10-minute recess for the council and the residents.
Thank you.
Session at 8 o'clock. And we are going to start this conversation off with Mr. Cotton.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to give you the results of some research that you have you known about and participated in to a certain extent, and I wanted to make sure you had that in front of you before you got into your deliberations. First is the leadership team. Mr. Marucci provided a tour to both the candidates to make sure they had all the knowledge they needed. We also had breakfast with Mr. Thomas and lunch with Mr. Doom on site here. We brought in food. And there's an assessment that we asked that they review afterwards and mark. So the first one I want to go over is Thomas, and the interview presentation, their experience, compatibility. And then I used the yellow highlighter to signify what the majority of the leadership team members felt. So very good impression, superior relation to professional appearance and leadership, management abilities, and overall skill set for the manager position. Those are the top three shown there. And then building effective working relationships with elected officials. This is a, we don't really know, they're not elected officials, but it appeared to them that he was qualified, which is the center column. So those are some of the highest scores. For Ms. Doom, same system, same setup. Thank Mr. Fairbrother. He was the host, and then he walked the candidates around the building. Very high marks, as you can see, on general impression, leadership, management, and overall skill set, as well as clarity of desire, enthusiasm and energy, communication skills, building effective working relationships, keeping elected officials informed. That's a perceived, building effective working relationships with village staff, all the way down to compatibility with the city staff. When it says hard to determine, there was zero. On the other one, there was one that said it would be hard to determine that. In this case, there were zero. 7 people out of 7 present thought that it would be a superior fit. So that is one additional measure for your consideration. The next is something called the Colby Assessment Right Fit Profile. What this does is it uses science, decades of it, to determine how people act in a workplace with a team, with their coworkers, with their supervisors, and getting things done, what they like, how they naturally wired. I think I sent you a video. I'm not sure you had a chance to look at it. There was a little bit of promo there. Sorry for that. But it did give you a sense. So they tend to say, and all these skills, all these systems have a little bit of generality, but they tend to say people who really, really love information, can't act, won't act without the right information. That's called a fact finder. Or maybe they're really huge on follow-through, so they're detail-oriented, and they want to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, and that's the blue. The green is someone who's innovative and wants to accept new challenges, complete new challenges, looking for better ways of doing things, and the final is the implementer, which is self-explanatory. So if you flip, there's 4 pages here that are important, and then there's some on you individually. So that's your copy. You can look at it at a later point, of course. Keep it. The 4 that are important are just prior to tab 2, so it's the end of the first tab, the last 3 pages. The one that I'm looking at is this.
Yep.
So the next 3 pages show you how the team, you are part of the team, you're interspersed within here, are wired in terms of your work styles and what you're looking for. And there's basically 3 groups of us, one of 6, one of 3, and another one of 3. So, and there's going to be a bottom line. That's the next page I show you at the end of the book. But so Cotton, Blum, Linz, Ritchie, Owens, and Rohib, I think I said that right, are all see the position as to what a city manager should be for the city of Eastpointe in giving a high emphasis towards being a quick start, towards looking at finding new ways to make this community the best it can be, and ceaselessly, with a lot of enthusiasm and energy. That's what the green signifies, and that's the highest for each one of those responses. So 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, and 7. So that's indicative of something you're going to see later. There's another group that is, and that first group sees the job as a negotiator-entrepreneur. Negotiator-entrepreneur. The second group is Abraham, DeMonico, and Van Haren, and they see the job as a strategic planner. So not that it doesn't take quick start, but they see it as needing someone who is more conscious and working through systems, the fact-finding, making sure that everything is well documented or systematized, structured, and no mistakes or less mistakes. Then there's a final category, Fairbrother, Lucido, and Sterling, that is not titled as to how they see this. I think she told me what the title was. So I'm going to have to look at my notes and on my computer and tell you what she titled that group. So she took all of that. She is Mary Martin. She's the PSG strategies person that I've worked with for the last 6-8 years. In Ottawa County, works with for the last 15 years. So if you go now to the first page under tab 3, and it looks like this. This is where the science comes in. By all the data, all these assessments that have been done nationwide for decades, they're able to make some predictions as to how well the performance will be, the range of success. So on the right-hand side, a perfect fit is someone that is somewhat high in fact-finding, is decent in follow-through, maybe a shade higher in innovation, and has a fair amount of implementation. So that's what the perfect fit is. So the candidates are asked to assess themselves, and you can see how they did, and then how that compares to what the perfect fit is according to the science. I want to say this is a tool. This is not telling you what to do. This is just another way, just like the thing I just handed out, it's another way of seeing how the world or how science would perceive the outcomes. So A is a perfect fit. You know, anything less than that is going to be okay until you get anything below a B. And then that's, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a huge problem, not right away, but the science shows that over a year, year and a half, 2 years, there will be less than desirable viewpoints of the performance of the individual. May not be the person's fault, because we all have different DNA, we're all wired differently, circumstances are different in every community. This team isn't exactly the same way in every community. But that's what the science tells us in this case that you need to be aware of. Now, if someone is not an A, there are ways to compensate through training or the way the team is made up or the way that things are structured. You know, to try to accommodate or extra coaching, extra training, extra facilitation, you know, those kinds of approaches. It's just easier if someone's got a higher score, you know, there's really no worries then. So with that being said, I think I've covered all the information to answer questions or work through how you want to proceed at this point.
Any questions for Mr. Cotton?
No?
I have a question. Why didn't we, or did we, I don't remember getting these graphs for our last city manager search. Why are we doing it?
Because I thought it was worth the money this time to see how it would play out. We did do it for our economic development manager, and that has that's aligning well with what our interview team saw. So, what actually I'm going to, depending on how this turns out and what your thoughts are, maybe recommend this and for my entire corporation to do it. If the client wants to pay for it, there's an expense, and of course you knew about that and agreed to it. So, I guess the short answer is it's not standard. It's more a Ryan Cotton thing, and it costs money. And I didn't know if you would be interested at that point, but I believe that it is something that's beneficial.
Okay. We're going to go to the next item on the agenda is council deliberations on a potential conditional offer. And first, we need to talk about the candidates. Let's start with Ms. Doom. Mr. Crowley. Still thinking? Ms. Lucida?
Well, I was really impressed with Miss Doom. I really liked her opinion of our city. I think that spoke a lot. I was really impressed that she was familiar with BSNA. I thought she spoke really well. I thought she really communicated very well yesterday with the residents when we had the meet and greet. I liked her answers when she talked about customer service, about working with the team and collaborating with the team to come up with new ideas and kind of supporting them to run with their ideas, you know, not just always like overseeing everyone and delegating everything. I really liked that. I thought she had great references. All of her references were absolutely fantastic. I think I like the fact that she seems really enthusiastic and was ready to jump in, you know, running. I mean, she seemed like she was definitely, you know, ready to go. So I was very impressed.
Mr. DeMonico?
Thanks. Yeah, I thought she connected very well with us. I thought definitely a lot of the things you said, Councilwoman Lucido, and I thought she just seemed very passionate, which was good, and it seems like she definitely knows what she's talking about also. So, you know, passionate's one thing and knowing what to do is one thing, but it seemed like she knows how to do both. I liked her a lot. I thought she was very good.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, I liked her enthusiasm. It was contagious. She was very transparent in her answers.
Yeah.
And very knowledgeable with the questions that was put to her.
I liked her enthusiasm too. She had a lot of energy, ready to go. What I didn't like is when I asked her about how do you bring diversity to a community and your ideas, and she said that was a hard question. She didn't really know how to do that. And so I think that's an important thing to, as a city manager, to know how to bring certain groups and different backgrounds together in a city that's changing. That's really important to me. And that should have been something easy. She should have been able to answer, and it shouldn't have been that hard. I liked her, like I said, I liked her energy. I liked her want to get involved in the community and things like that. And she said she had previous experience doing that in the community. That's why it bothered me that she didn't know how to bring a diverse community together and didn't have ideas in doing that. And so those are pretty much some of the statements that some of the things that I saw. Anybody else have anything else to add to that?
Not really.
Well, let's go towards Mr. Thomas, starting with Mr. Curley. Councilman Curley?
Well, for one thing, he was very precise in his answers. Slow to respond, but the wheels were turning, and he wanted to, digest the question that we were asking him. And once he got it out, it was very precise and very to the point. And I like that. And it seemed to me that would be his style of not jumping out with answers to questions. He's thoughtful and wants to think about it first. So I was very impressed with that.
Ms. Lucida?
I thought he had a very strong financial background. I definitely think from a financial aspect that he has a lot more experience when it comes to that aspect of it. I really liked his idea of the walking town meetings.
like that too.
That was a very,
too.
very interesting idea. That really popped out to me.
Sure. So, yeah, he was definitely, he's done this before, and that was clear. I kind of felt, I guess like on the connected front or that kind of thing, it was a little more vague. I would have liked to see more examples like the walking town hall. I was trying to ask that, and I think a lot of questions were more of a vague answer, and I was hoping to just hear more examples because I don't know, just when I think about when we're up here, I'm just thinking about my own jobs and specific things I've done that I thought were exciting. I'd want to try and talk about those and not just more of a vague, I could handle any sort of scenario like this. But, it seems pretty clear he has been a good manager for sure at other cities. And I think I'd like someone that'd be more connecting with everyone. I guess, like you said a good or someone said finance background might fit a little better, doing that as opposed to the city manager position, maybe.
Ms. Owens, just one more thing, if you don't mind, real quick, I want to touch on. Another thing about Thomas, I thought a lot of his answers were very, routinely answered, because he's been through this interview process before. But another thing that did stick out besides that was I like the fact that he tried to make it a point to meet with the midnight shift on police and fire. Which I know on fire, we have a 24-hour shift, so they can meet during the day. But with police, I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting, too.
Wow. I think, I don't know if you heard what he said. Mr. DeMonico said he didn't, he was vague on some of the accomplishments he did. I think he spoke highly on one when he said he went to a city and they didn't have a department that he had to recreate, that they didn't have. That's huge when you come somewhere in a new city and you have to recreate something or create something that's not there. That's huge. And so I don't know if with the healthcare system and things like that, I think he mentioned that. I think you missed that. I like that he talked about help people with their weaknesses and not just get rid of them. I like that he talked about the part that he talked about they dealt with grants for low-income housing in the downtown area, which is specifically the area that you deal with, the DDA, correct? So he talked about a lot of things and, fixing the health care plan and deals with retention issues. So he talked about a lot of things that he has done, and talked about savings and merging different companies. And so I really like that about him. I also like that the walking town meetings, when he went to go take time out to walk and meet the residents and things like that. And I just liked a lot about what he said, and he has a lot of background in budgeting, finance, planning, and he also talks about communication and transparency. And one thing I did like about him was when he talked about last night's meeting, and he talked about how in meetings that we should have graphs and things like that. I think me and Mr. DeMonico talked about that, and that's why we were able to table that discussion. Well, we didn't table it, but we stopped the discussion to move on and come back to it, was because we didn't have graphs. We didn't have an idea from where we are to where we're trying to go with the streets and the money we're putting in there. And I like how he said he is not just gonna present things to us, he's gonna break it down and do sessions with council so we can understand, and not only we understand, but the residents understand. And not have us get up here and just make quick responses and votes without us, knowing educationally about the graphs and things like that. And I think in the city manager, like he said, we are one, and it lets me know that he's not trying to just put things on the agenda and tell us to vote on it. He wants us to be educated in what we're voting on, and we'll take the time out to educate us on that, and also put things out for the residents to know what we're voting on so they can be educated on what we are spending their money on. And then I also like that he gave us a 100-day,
Yeah.
100-day list.
He had it already.
He had it already, which lets me know he's proactive in what he wants to do. He already sees himself working here. So meeting, and then I know Ms. Doon was able to come a day before. That's because she lives closer than him. He lives in Illinois, so of course she could come a day before him and view the town and tour the town. But Mr. Thomas did something amazing, which you just said. He went to go visit the police and fire on a midnight shift, which tells me he goes above and beyond what we ask him and do things on his own, and shows initiative as well, because he could have just did the tour and said, you know what, I'm tired, I came from Illinois, my kids, bad outside, but he took time out to go above and beyond, and not only go above and beyond, but have a plan set for the first 100 days of working with the city of Eastpointe.
Madam Mayor, when you get two candidates that are as close as these two are, you kind of have to go back, which we have just done. And maybe one or two things will jump out at you. One is the walking town hall, which is pretty unique, and then being prepared with the list. Not only talked about it, but at the end of the session gave us a copy of his 100-day plan, which I thought was pretty unique.
Absolutely.
I mean, overall, I believe that we have gotten very lucky, and we have a very tough decision ahead of us, because I think that both candidates are extremely qualified for the position. I think that they both will end up doing a good job if they receive the job in the city of Eastpointe. I do feel, in my opinion, that, I'm leaning probably more towards Ms. Doom right now. I just think she'd be a better fit when it comes to working in Eastpointe with our residents.
And I think I'd agree with Councilwoman Lucido. And actually also I was Mr. Thomas out here because I was the lone wolf that put him down.
Right. Yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
Yes, already was.
and I do, I'm very happy he came out, and I think, yeah, they're both good. I think though, if I had to choose, I like Miss Doom more. And yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Mr. Curley?
You're both right. Yeah. I'll just throw this out there because we're just discussing things that, however we go, I would be extremely happy if it was a 4-0 vote. I think they're so close, so whichever one we would pick, I think that person has a 4-0 vote coming.
I agree. That's what I did last time. So.
Yeah.
Well, we can't promise a 4-0 vote. Everybody has their own ideas on what they want to see in a city manager. And so, I mean, I think both of them are good. But what I'm impressed with is having a plan already set and having goals and ways to helping city council understand their job better so we can vote better and be educated, and also the residents. That was really important to me. I know a lot of times city managers help us, with our decision-making, but they don't, to me, well, Mr. Cotton has taken a lot of time, but it sounds like he has a plan set where he takes time out with each council member and sets goals and also breaks things down at a level where you can, at layman's term, and don't give you those big words and things like that, because none of us up here are engineers. None of us went to school for zoning and planning or economic development, but we have a city manager that has all the knowledge and wants to bring that knowledge to us so that we can better, serve the community, and I like that about him. And so I would lean more towards Thomas, but again, both of them are good candidates.
I have my notes in front of me now, if you want to know more about that.
You're talking about the Colby?
Colby method.
With the Colby method, well, I like the Colby method, but I'm not too fond of how it came out, because one of the persons that got a B+ didn't even get a chance to get to this level. So, I mean, is it going to be, is it as accurate as we, want it to be? But if you want to talk some more about some of the things you wrote down, Mr. Cotton, please.
Well, I'm not, I think I'll summarize some of this because, so I met with her at 6 a.m. The other day on the way here and was given the books, and we spent an hour and I took these notes. So that group of 6 that sees the position a certain way, the negotiator entrepreneurs, those of you who, some of you are here that, you view project management as being important. Initiating change is important, as long as the risks are not crazy. Those people who are negotiating entrepreneurs, which one of the candidates is an excellent communicator and ad-libs and thinks on their feet, yet can still share complex details with essential facts. They strategize opportunities. In your case, Madam Mayor, your score is that similar, but a little bit different. So she viewed that as you are slightly more interested in a person who's a promoter or looking for development opportunities. And this person, meaning the candidate that scores this way, would stick their neck out and try things and be very good at experiments and trials. The second 3 that I mentioned see the administrator as keeping day-to-day and smooth operations. They're looking for someone who's more traditional, looking at guidelines, structuring high-probability solutions, and they're called a strategic planner. The last 3, the ones that wasn't labeled, that's what I really went to my notes for. Those people she termed as wanting seeing the city manager as someone who has boots on the ground, focused on tangibleness, willing to change the lights, get sand in the shoes, get her done. Councilmember Lucido, she said, looks at like a physician who would analyze things, wouldn't want to make the errors, and needs some due diligence. But yet, on the other hand, they wouldn't wait 2 months for a CAT scan result, so you're not looking for that much reassurance. In other words, those people want eventually something to happen and not just sit in the office and delegate. So she termed that boots on the ground. She sees one of our candidates as a strategic planner, not an entrepreneur, wanting day-to-day smooth operations, with a new mayor who wants to get things done, at least according to these scores. That's, you know more than anything. That fit she didn't see as ideal. Colby System doesn't recommend hiring anyone below that what I said. So she saw one of our candidates as a mediator, meets profile perfectly. The problem would be, they have a problem-solving bent, so they would see all sides of the equation. She said there's a double side to that, in that they need someone, so this is not as positive, they need someone to be pushing. So if everything is fine and no one's not wanting or striving for something new, having that around is a good complement to them wanting to strive and have something new too. So think about that type of person as a vice principal or a lawyer who wants to find solutions and build consensus. This person drives toward building consensus and bridging differences and being able to be an intermediary. They thrive in teams, but they need others to also push initiatives that they can respond to. So it's a 2 + 2 equals something more than 4. They need, so they clearly respond to the needs of others. And they're good at ad-libbing, innovating strategies, and getting out front. Then there's the 1.5 years I mentioned for the other profile. Unless, she said, council changed their expectations. So.
Council?
It's very interesting looking at these. I was kind of comparing like the way I answered questions to the candidates and along with everyone else, and it's kind of interesting.
Do you see yourself as a doctor?
Yes, every day, actually.
I liked it too because it lets me know what levels of thinking we all are at and what we all have in common. And it sounded like, what page was that on?
Well, all three of us ended up on a different page, so.
Well, it seemed like
They filled it out.
Mr. Cotton, the city manager, the finance director, Linda Lentz, Joe Marucci, Director Rohit, and I all had the same type of idea of what we wanted a city manager to be. And finance and city managers and directors and I included. So.
By the way, she gave me her business cards, and she welcomed me to distribute them, and anyone who wants to call. As you get into this and then want to ask questions, she's going to make herself available as much time as you need.
You didn't get a chance to do the Kobe, Mr.
Pardon me?
You didn't get a chance to do the Kobe, Mr.
Did I do it?
You didn't get a chance to do it?
First time I heard of Kobe was when we came here tonight. I had no idea. No, I didn't do it. No one asked me to do it.
So it was sent to the email, but I'll tell you one thing, Mr. Cotton, I realized, it was blocked on mine, in the spam, and I had to release it. So
Yeah.
if you're not checking those, then Mr. Curley may not have received it because it was being.
On Monday morning, I tried to reach you extensively, and we didn't connect, but the point was to say, hey, Mr. Curley it must be caught in spam or something, so that was, and it happened here too. There had to be some resends, so that's a one little downside, I guess.
Then I was looking at the fact that no one actually picked, the only person who actually got picked in the two was Thomas. Because nobody even thought about Miss Doom.
Got picked. What do you mean?
Because we didn't pick nobody really,
We all chose Miss Doom when we did the interviews.
no, the last time we didn't, did we? It was somebody that we didn't pick and end up being added.
Yeah,
Doom and
there were three that we added.
Miss Doom and.
No, there was
Light.
two. You considered three, and then you added two.
Yeah. Light and Doom, I believe we all picked.
That is correct. I have the record here.
And then definitely
And I
not
think
Thomas
Miss
Thomas.
Owens and I were the only ones that picked,
No, I didn't pick her.
Scott, and Cardi was the only one that picked Thomas Thomas.
Right.
Yeah, I think Doom was number two, right? What was her number?
Yeah, so,
Yeah, she was number 2.
yeah, me,
Yeah, so,
Oh,
yeah,
all three of
Did-
you guys picked her?
DeMonico, Curley. Maybe, I can't read my writing. Did you pick her?
It was the three of us.
yeah.
Then that's not a 7, it's a 2. Okay.
That's what I thought it was, the 7 that we picked. We did, we picked 1, 5, 1,
Seven was
2,
low.
5, and
She was
7.
number 2.
Which one?
Elke was number 2.
Yeah, so this is what I recorded. DeMonico was 2, 1, 9, and 7. Curley, 7, 8, 2, and 1. Lucido, I can't make out that number, 7, 5, and 6.
The last one was a 2, I think she did 1, 7, 5, and 2.
I did 4, I believe.
Oh, you said 1, 7, 5, and
I thought you
2?
said 3.
No,
Cardi did 4.
I had 4. I might actually have it written. No, I probably don't have
I
it written.
have everyone's numbers right here.
And Owens, 1, 5, and 7.
Yeah, I did 4.
So I wrote that 2 people did number 2.
That's what I thought too.
I have 3.
And 1 did Thomas, correct?
Yeah, that was number 9, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
Cardi.
DeMonico
I mean,
put Thomas.
Yeah, number 9.
Council, what are your thoughts? Like I said, both of them are really good candidates. That's why they came this far.
No, I agree. I think
So-
both of them are very qualified candidates.
Yeah.
Thomas definitely reminds me a lot of some of, our past city managers. I think that, I think they're both qualified. I do think Miss Doom is more energetic. I feel like she's going to have more ideas to really involve the community. And I know when we originally interviewed her, one thing that really I liked about her is like she said she really likes to get out and walk the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That really, I remember her saying that and that sticking out at that time when we had that Skype interview, that she actually wants to get out there and be a presence in the community. That was something that really stuck out. And she has like a very bubbly personality. I think that she would get along very well, not even with this, but from my own point of view, with everybody that works at City Hall. And I feel like she's a good problem solver. I think that she had a lot of ideas about how, like, getting to the root of things and, trying to negotiate. So not everyone's gonna always get along, but trying to negotiate so people can at least work together. And, yeah, I think that she was,
Yeah, she seemed to know a lot more about Eastpointe for sure, too. That came across. I think she was trying to make sure she, understood the community before coming out and interviewing. Yeah, Mr. Curley, we don't know which way you're feeling though. The other 3 of us
Well,
have swayed one way or
Yeah,
the other.
past, mayor. And knowing,
Yeah,
retired.
how many city
Retired.
managers have you worked with?
Yeah,
There
I
had to
mean-
have been a few, right?
yeah,
I think it was 2.
hired a couple city managers, let go some.
Actually, in the 12 years that I was there, we only hired one city manager.
Oh,
Just
So we're-
one. Yeah.
Okay.
we're already ahead of you then.
Yeah. And then between then and now, there's been 5, I think.
Yeah.
I think I said it before, I could vote yes for either one of them probably, but I'm a stickler on, when I guess my experience when we hired a pastor, and I was on a call committee many times over the last 60 years, we had to get 95 or 98% of the congregation to say yes, or else that pastor wouldn't come. So I just, if it's so close, if somebody made the motion, I mean, it's so close that it's a public meeting, so if the person is gonna know how the vote went, right?
Right.
So, if we had the fifth person here, I don't think someone would come if it was a 3-2 vote.
I mean, well,
I don't think I would. If we had 5 people sitting here, and it came out to be a 3-2 vote. The 2 votes only need 1 more vote to, don't pack your bags, so,
Mr. Cotton, anything you're thinking about as we,
I'm thinking I don't want to put my 2 cents in. That's
maybe
what
not
I'm
about a
thinking.
particular candidate, but like, just about how, councils have decided, anything that helps,
Well, yeah,
or anything?
I went one place with a 6-1 vote, another place with a 6-1 vote, and that one was hard to win over. I succeeded partly in one case, and in the other case, I succeeded entirely. In fact, the person said, "Gee, you're the best city manager we ever had," when he left office. But it's not easy, and if it's 3-2, I think that's. But we don't have 3; we have 4. So
Mr. Albright's got a question.
Madam Mayor, if I could,
yes, please.
does a decision necessarily have to be made this evening? Or
I
is
hope
this
so.
something- Is this, well,
It
is
doesn't
this
have to be
something,
made.
is this
this
something
evening.
that perhaps
Yeah.
the council members can ponder, consider further, sleep on it, think about it more, and we could have another special meeting, say, scheduled for next week or at some other date to give the individual council, and it doesn't have to be even that far, just for the council members just to consider it further as opposed to making that decision necessarily tonight. Just a thought.
I just want to interject. I kind of thought that too for a minute, because that's what we did last time. I think we have a day when we postponed the final decision. We came back the following day. But I do know that at least one of the candidates is getting, a lot of communities waited till after the election, so she's getting phone calls and interviews are getting set up. I don't know exactly when they're happening, but we're ahead of them, she said. Oops, now you know who. So anyway, we wouldn't want to take 2 weeks, I don't think.
I was initially, just probably a few minutes ago, thinking that, and that's what I thought maybe you were going to say, Mr. Cotton, but I kind of also thinking, I think I feel about the same way I did with the first interview and yesterday. So I think, even sleeping on it, I think I'd still feel the same way. I might kind of think about a couple different things about each candidate, but I think I'd still come out with Ms. Doom ahead.
I need to agree with Mr. DeMonico. From the first interview day on Saturday, I've kind of had the same feeling. So I don't know if my opinion would change if I had more time, because I feel like I have been thinking about this since Saturday, and it's kind of stayed the same, so.
I don't know, meeting somebody and seeing them on TV is 2 different things to me. So the first interview was, just vocal and things like that. You didn't get their real personality and things. And yes, I do agree, Ms. Doom has a lot more personality and more bubbly, but that doesn't always mean you can do the job because you're bubbly either. And Mr. Thomas is more reserved. That doesn't mean he can't do the job. Can do the job either. But he's more, like Mr. Curley said, when he speaks, he takes his time to make sure he says the right thing and he thinks about what he has to say. And so he's just more reserved than her. And so the personalities are different, but their work styles are different as well. And we also want to, look at both of those things. Because I know a lot of you guys said she's bubbly, she'll walk the streets. I think he said the same thing too, but he might not come off as bubbly, but we don't want to erase people because of that one, thing. We want to look at their work styles, and I think he put a lot on the table of what he can bring to Eastpointe and his ideas and his goals and his vision. And I think he put that on paper and presented it to all four of us tonight. So,
I will tell you the one thing today that, because I did like both candidates a lot, but the one thing today, if anything, that kind of probably swayed my opinion even a little bit more was reading their recommendations, the references. So I think it seems to me like Ms. Doom worked very well in past communities, and that stood out. That really stood out in her letters of recommendation. And these are references that she chose to put down for us to contact. So there are obviously people that like her. She's not going to write someone down that doesn't. So, but comparing the two, hers were very, a lot of professionalism, easy to talk to, things like that. Very good analytical skills, strong communication skills, strong representative. She's great with coming up with ideas to improve the city and push forward. I mean, the list goes on and on her references.
yeah. I like that she's bubbly and things like that and has character, because you need to get along with the people you work with and things like that. But also, I still want people to have some type of, with Mr. Thomas, he still was firm, and I want somebody to come in here and still be firm, because in the past, as you can see, the last city managers were not as respected amongst the directors and staff and things like that because of certain things. And we're still trying to work on getting that level of respect back here in the city of Eastpointe. And I think we need somebody that's gonna be firm with the staff, and and I think he still has a personal skill, and he's still firm and fair. I think in the past, last person we hired let people go without seeing their weaknesses and giving them the training, and I think he's doing that. He talked about he has done that in the past, and how he builds people up who works for a city, and also talked about how he builds a city up too, by walking the community. I think both of them talked about that. And he talked about,
They did.
yeah, but he talked about town hall meetings and things like that, and different things he did with the neighbors and the citizens and the residents. So, but again, like we said, they're both good candidates. I just saw a little bit more stronger things in him than her. I think they both had strengths, but just in different areas.
For me, one of the differences too is I felt like Miss Doom was more of a visionary, like coming up with ideas and like trying to improve things. Where with Mr. Thomas, he was kind of like just making sure everything stays stable, the community, we stay strong, but not like advancing the community, adding like new things and kind of looking outside the box. And I think that we're at a point right now where there's a lot of changes going on in Eastpointe, and I want someone who's going to have those visions and be able to move Eastpointe, in a positive direction with the changes that's going on.
Did she mention any of those changes she would? Because that was the first question I asked all of them when they did the tour. What was the first thing they would do? Did you get that out of her?
Well, I didn't get it out of her, but she only spent one day here. I do think from like reading her
Spent 2 days, and this was her third
I
day.
think from reading her references in her past cities, she has done that. If you look through her reference, the letters that were said, that she had a lot of ideas that she implemented. And I think she did talk about one of the developments she did in Alaska.
The marina.
Yes,
was
the marina,
neat.
yes, so.
Yeah, and I think, the higher level things are gonna be direction from us, and then it's gonna take time to figure out the intricacies of all the departments, I think, and I feel she'd do a better job of that.
I think that when we have an idea, she's not just gonna brush it under the rug. She's gonna be the person that's gonna look into our idea, and see if it's feasible, or see if there's some, because everyone has ideas and not all of them are always great. But I think she's gonna be the one that would take the time to actually be like, okay, yeah, in my opinion, I think he would just be more of like the status quo, like, well, let's just keep everything kind of the same. But that's just what I got from them,
Mr. Curley, quiet over there.
What?
You quiet over there.
He is.
Yeah.
That's not like you.
Well, I don't mind sitting here for a while. I really don't want to go home without a decision. It's, you put too much effort into it.
Well, why don't we try something then?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try something, and the residents, give them a chance to come up and speak about, because they were part of the interview process by watching. You ask questions, and just hear what you have to say, because your tax dollars are going into the city manager as well. So I would love to hear what you have to say, just to help us get open-minded and thinking. So. I'm gonna open up the hearing of the public right now to any of the residents that, would like to have something to say. It's open now, to give you a chance. Please come up to the podium and state your name, please. And where you're from. And we're gonna open up the hearing of the public.
Good evening, Mary Hall Rayford, resident of Eastpointe. Council, Madam Mayor. I sat here and listened quite intently because I was taking notes to post on Nextdoor for some of the residents who have difficulty hearing. And so I was impressed with Ms. Doom. They both are good, but I think I heard Ms. Lucido say the fit for the community. Mm-hmm. And that to me is important. And just as you came up with that, during the public hearing now, and I was thinking, well, you have three of us sitting here. We might be able to help influence that decision one way or the other. But I did like them both, but I would definitely be in favor of Ms. Doom. She seems to have the pulse of what she's doing and a heart for the job.
Thank you, Ms. Rayford. Mr. Creech, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and the council. I have to agree with every word because I said the same thing about it. Since I've been here, I'm not one that exactly likes law. I'm not one that exactly likes everyday life. And everybody up there in that council really knows me. I'm ready for new blood. We need, this city itself needs some blood. I mean, we need lots of it because I said we can stay in here, we can't keep, status quo doesn't work. We've already seen that. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it because I'm going to come back in, as I say, come this summer, I'm going to come back in just as hard as I can. I want to bring this city back up. I want to see our parks come back up. I want to see everything. We've lost all our kids. I mean, we've lost our schools. You can look at it right now, too. It's an older city. There again, too, I want to see this city grow. I really want to see it come back up. And as I said, when it comes right down to it, Mrs. Boone is... She's got an effort going forward. I understand what it's like to get stopped before you get started. I've got 5 years invested back in the city, as I say, when I come back in this time, I'm fighting pretty hard. I found out what people what they don't like, they don't like. But I said, I found out now these people are ready. I'm ready for a change. And they're ready so let's go forward. Like I said before, too. I mean, I understand Mr. Thomas has got a lot on his plate. He's got a lot of good ideas, too. But he still wants to stay in status quo anymore. I'm ready for a change. So I'm saying, Mrs. Doom, I said the same difference about it. And that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Creech. We have some of the staff. Did you guys want to say anything?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I always have an opinion. I actually think that both of them were really good candidates, and I was happy to see some real qualified candidates that I think either
Can you
one
state
could.
your name, please? Let everybody know.
Mary Van Haren, Director of the Building Department.
Thank you.
And so I think that either one of them could run the city and do a good job. I got a feeling with Miss Doom that she got along well with the staff, and I just felt that there was a good close connection there. And we felt that, you know, there's a little discussion, not much or a great deal of it, but we just felt that she'd be a real good mix with the staff.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to say anything? No?
Madam Mayor,
And the hearing of the public is closed. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Yes, sir, Mr. Curley.
I would like to make a motion that the city of Eastpointe, I don't know, you usually have the motions written down, so I'm going to say it, and if it, you know, clean it up. I would move that the city of Eastpointe offer Miss Doom a contract. We start negotiating with Miss Doom to become our new city manager.
Support.
Did I? Is that legal enough? Is it?
Ideally authorize the city attorney or the city manager or someone else to conduct the negotiations.
Yes. Whatever you said.
City attorney.
That's appropriate.
And I will support that.
Just a point of order. Thank you. We might have been here another hour and a half. But listen, we're listening to the citizens of this city, right?
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being here for so long and coming up and giving your opinion. It helped a lot.
We got a motion and support. Call the roll. Anybody got any questions, anything they want to add? Mr. Fairbrother, please.
Councilperson Curley,
Yes.
Councilperson Lucido,
Yes.
Councilperson DeMonico,
Yes.
Mayor Owens.
Yes. So the next item is, we're going to talk about the conditional offer and the, are we going to do that? We're going to do that in closed session. We do that openly, correct? I'll talk to the,
We do it openly, correct?
right.
Yeah.
I'm talking, we're talking to Rich. You want to speak on that, Rich?
Yes, Madam Mayor, what I have included are three different proposed employment agreements for city manager. The first two are documents that I brought with me to the meeting. These were used in previous agreements, and the one actually contains actual terms, including dollar amounts. The other one contains blanks, and the council can certainly discuss what should go in each of those blanks. And then I also asked Ms. Lentz to obtain a copy of the previous city manager's employment agreement. It is slightly different from the two that I brought with me this evening. There are two additional paragraphs in that agreement, and they include towards the back of the agreement an arbitration clause and also an at-will employment clause, whereas the other two agreements did not include that. And so I think this is a good starting point that the council can go through paragraph by paragraph and discuss what the council believes is or are appropriate terms, and then go from there.
I think that, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, because I don't think we will be able to go over all three of these.
Yeah, I was just gonna take the blank one, and I think, for me, I'm not really that, I trust our attorney to write it legally where
Yeah.
it's secure. I just wanna kind of discuss our terms. To me, that's all that's important, so as long as we give him our terms, I feel like he can draft something. Whatever draft he chooses to use, I trust his opinion, if he uses Sabota's draft or Steve Duchesne's draft.
Whatever draft you choose to use, of course, we want to still see it, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like salary, I guess, like,
Well, we should start at the beginning. I think the first thing is the term,
okay,
right?
sure.
All right?
All right, yeah, we'll go straight through, like, all the blank, we're on the one with all the blanks on it
Yeah,
then, right? Okay.
for right now, because then we can.
Fill in the blanks.
I've like two. like we've done.
I'm fine with 3, but if everyone else agrees to 2, I'm fine with 2. I'm open either way.
That's good.
2 years.
I do want to make sure that we do a 6-month review, have that in there, like we did in Mr. Soda's. I don't think it's in this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It is in Mr. Sabota's contract. yes.
Yeah, but I don't think it was in this original one. I think it was just the yearly
Yeah.
ones.
This, or here, page 3, evaluation shall be conducted within 6 months of the beginning of the,
Okay.
so look at that, don't even need to do that
Alright.
then.
It's under paragraph 5, yes.
Yeah, that's in there.
All right, so then, so we have
That's
2
done,
for the
Councilman
term.
Lucido.
I can't hear you guys.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Councilwoman Lucido was just saying that 6 months, would like to review after 6 months of hired, and then yearly after that.
Okay.
And that's already in here, I guess, is essentially what we were saying too.
All right, should we move to compensation?
Yeah. 115? What are we looking at here?
I was thinking in at least 117, because that's what we were paying Sabota, if not 120.
I figured
I was,
she's gonna,
yeah, I was just
Counter.
thinking, yeah, we could do 117. I would like to eliminate the car allowance out of it, so,
Yeah. I think it's viewed as a little bit of a bum if you don't match the former person, especially since the former person was, I'll stop.
I know where
well,
you're,
on the one
I
before,
mean, not necessarily on the car, but on the
Yes,
the
yeah.
salary.
Yeah.
so I would say
117 's good.
117 to start.
That's a good start.
alright.
Well, her expectation was 115, so let's go with 115, if that's where she wants to start at. And then you're taking away her car, so, I mean, I was gonna say, because what we were paying, like a certain amount of money for the car, what was it?
450, I think it was $450 a month.
Yeah,
So that's about
so it's
6,000 a year,
Oh, okay.
right? Approximately,
Something,
yeah, 5,500.
So even if we did half of that,
No,
Time to
Time to
go.
go home.
Meeting's over.
adjourned.
Motion to adjourn? Wait a minute, now, didn't we,
So
it's going to be 117 or what?
I think 117,
we're
because
still
we're
discussing.
already paying her loss if we eliminate the car because of the,
Yeah.
nobody said we're gonna eliminate the car.
well, I'm
We were
saying
talking
that's
about it.
that's an option, you know?
I would hate to look at an application or, look at something that's out there, for me to apply to, and then you take everything away. So, we're gonna give her the amount that her expectation is 115, so let's give her the 115. Her expectation is to have a car, that's what she saw in the ad. So
Well-
if we're gonna give her, the amount, at least give her half of that.
Wait a minute, in all due respect, 3 of us said 117.
Mr. Cotton, was the car in the ad? If it was, then I might have to change my mind.
No, well, I'll just read you what was in the ad.
No, Mr. DeMonico said 115 at first.
So you're changing from 117 to 115?
Mr. DeMonico said
He
115.
said 115 at first.
I guess I felt like we were still discussing it, so I didn't, but, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cotton.
The ad said, expected starting salary is 110,000 to 125,000. Residency is desired. Candidates should apply by September 30. And I think somewhere it says competitive fringe benefits, but it didn't specify car.
Okay. That's what we offered in the last contract, correct?
Correct.
I guess just, I know the last manager thing, just take into consideration too, the one we had just like right before that was at 107, so.
Well, we're talking about a difference of $2,000. If you guys
Yeah.
want, we just meet in the middle at 116, and I mean, it's $1,000 difference either way. I mean, I don't feel that strongly.
Well-
If you guys are really that set at 115, I'm fine with going with 115.
115 is 115 and giving her half the amount for the car allowance.
And she's gonna hear us negotiating too,
Yes.
so she's,
She is.
I'm assuming, unless she doesn't watch
Car
this few
allowance is
minutes.
250 instead of 450? Is that what you're saying?
That's what yes, that's what I'm discussing with council, yeah. What do you all think?
I guess my general thought was, to me, it just seems like we just pay a certain amount and not do this car.
Do the car at all?
Just do an amount.
Okay.
It just seems like it's more complicated than it needs to be
Right,
to me.
I guess part of the reason is when we had our last city manager and we did the car, I wasn't necessarily completely opposed to the car, but I feel like we got a lot of negativity from the residents about the fact that we were paying for the car. So in my opinion, I think it just looks better, we just pay them a little bit more and not have that. But once again, if you guys all want to do the car thing instead of compensate annually, I'm completely fine with that too, so.
It sounds like she probably already got a car, but
Well,
it's up to her, so.
Mr. Sabota did too. He just
Yeah.
took the money, the lump sum every month. I mean, we didn't actually purchase the car. We just gave him that much more on his check, the 400.
Yeah,
So let's talk about the alternatives without the car, and I didn't know about that background you just said, so that's important to listen to, of course. The alternative is the person would record mileage, and it's 58 cents a mile right now, and if they're back and forth to Lansing a bunch of times, all year round, that might be, more money. It depends on what your expectation is. The alternative is they take a pool car, and I assume that's possible. Mary's gone, but I think there's plenty out there, from what I can tell. Brian, do you know of any other options? How do you think other staff deal with it?
Other staff would just use they call them a marshmallow car. That's an option. I mean, we could always buy a city vehicle if we wanted to. I'm not suggesting that, but it is another option.
I will say to anyone that's pushing back, if you did a car, man, 90% of the managers have a car allowance. So what you were doing is right in the median, or whatever, the mode.
So like
Well,
I
I
said,
guess
that's fine. If everyone
that's-
wants to do the car allowance, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah.
half of.
I'm not that
I'm
set.
thinking half, but she might use that for traveling, because it sounds like she doesn't stay that, she stays in
Good
one
idea.
county.
Let's do the half. Okay.
So we're at 250 for a car allowance?
Yeah.
Is it- and
But
that-
we writing this down, it doesn't mean she's gonna come back and
Per
ask
month.
for more, so we just,
50 per month.
It's 450 a month, right, before, I know it's-
Just so I'm clear, the car allowance per month is going to be how much?
250, we said?
250.
250, okay, thank you.
All right, the next one, she's not moving out of state, so I don't think we need to pay for relocation fees. But I would like to offer her, like we did with some of the other applicants, some sort of money if she decides she wants to move to Eastpointe to purchase a home here. Because I do think that it would represent well if she lived in Eastpointe. So I think, a one-time lump sum if she decided she wanted to relocate to Eastpointe.
Or we can offer her one of our tax reversion houses.
Yeah, I don't think that's the
Win-win.
route I would necessarily want to go with that, but I would rather just give her a number.
So it could be moving expenses, could be anything. Just
Yes, yeah,
Just a dollar month number, and she can do with it what she wants.
right.
If she lives in East Point.
If she
If she
lives
wants
in-
to
if she
come in.
wants to purchase a home in East Point.
Yeah.
And I think we would almost have to word it too, like, it would have to be prorated. She could get all the money at once, but if she,
Like moved?
if she moved, or, yeah, we separated, you know what I'm saying? So like, let's say we did 30,000, make it over a 3-year period, it's 10,000 per year. We'd give her the whole 30, but she'd have to pay us back, reimburse us back, like every year, 10,000 or something.
I see what you're saying.
I just think that it would look really good if our city manager actually lived in the city. So it's like really kind of important to me.
I would hate to pay for somebody to have a house when we own houses, though.
Well, I wouldn't expect a buyer. I mean, I think the average house right now is about 115 in East Point. I don't expect to give her 115,000, so.
Knowing how people look at things and make it up, I agree with you. It's like you got this property, but somebody might say, hey, just like the car, hey, they got a house, So I think there's a possibility that could backfire.
Yeah, like I said, I would rather just give her a standard amount, not a,
How many do we have right now? She'd just have a pick between like 30 then or something, or, how many do we have?
well, and another thing is too, like for me, a lot of our tax reversion homes are not to code. I would not want to put anyone in a house that's not to code. So you're talking about now, we have to put money into this house and you know what I'm saying? I would not feel comfortable putting anyone in a home that's not to code. And they're tax reversion homes, so most of them are not to code.
All of them are not bad. If we're gonna get somebody $20,000, why not give it back to ourselves?
Well, why not, wouldn't we let her pick her own house?
Out of the
Why-
list
why-
of tax
why would-
reversion houses?
Why would we bring her in and says, you gotta take this house?
We're not doing
Why would
that.
you do that?
We're not doing that. Well, many cities, you know, do things where you get a home and you stay in the home for a certain amount of years. It's given to you. City's been doing that for years. That's just one idea I was trying to do with the tax reversion houses. Instead of giving $20,000 into, I mean, of course, a home, she can still pick a home out of the tax reversion houses. It's just we're gonna use our money anyway. We're just gonna put $20,000 in a tax reversion house anyway. Why not use the money into, you know, our own fund? So that's all I'm trying to say. It makes sense. It might not make sense to you, but if we have homes that we own, why would we buy another or give money to another home that we don't own? It's just ideas here. We're just
Yeah.
giving ideas. We're just discussing.
I think I would be right on board if we had already done all the work on all of them, I guess. You know, like we were about to sell them on the market or something too. I guess that's about it. Because I think it's kind of like Councilwoman Lucido was saying. A lot of them probably need a lot of work before you'd live in them.
Well, what houses are there?
Okay, maybe then all of them. I guess you're on the committee, so.
So all of them need.
All of
over
them
20.
definitely need work. I mean, none of them are livable right now. Like, I mean, I guess
None of them
you
are
could live
livable.
there, but you might not have plumbing, you know? So they're all in need. I mean, they're tax reversion homes, and people, a lot of times when they know they're leaving, they let them go. And a lot of times they sit empty for a long time. So a lot of them have a lot of plumbing issues and, you know, things like that need to be done. So, especially because when they get evicted, they don't winterize the homes, so then the pipes bust. And that's probably one of the biggest issues we have in the tax reversion homes is plumbing issues.
So was 30 a number that you just, was an
I
even
just-
number to throw out?
I just popped
or-
out a number. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not stuck to that, but it was just like an idea. I mean,
What did we do last time? There was a 5 and a 10, I thought, or something.
I think it was 10 we did last time. But like I said, to me, I just think it would be so awesome if they lived here and they,
Oh, okay, so that's what I'm thinking of. It was 5 to relocate and 5 more if it was in the city.
And then if they moved out, they had to repay the 5,000.
And if you moved out, you just had to pay while, during your whole term of employment, paid the 5,000 back if you moved.
I like that.
So if she's here 10 years and.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Councilmember Lucido, that number would speak volumes. I think creates a certain, I mean, that's really putting your best foot forward, I think.
okay. So we had it broken up 5 and 5, but she's not really relocating that far. So I would just be like fine with a straight 10 if, you know, put towards the purchase of the home, so.
Okay, so it'll be what, 10?
I wouldn't even mind going high. Were you thinking
I
about it?
mean,
I wouldn't keep it how it is.
I wouldn't mind going higher, but to keep everyone happy, I would be fine with doing 10 if everyone else agrees to that, so.
I like to stay where it is and let her negotiate with us.
Okay.
Because on the graph, it said I'm a negotiator from the graph, from science.
I saw.
From science, I'm the negotiator. So, yeah, so let's stick to what they expect, you know, or they already saw. She's, you know, I know we giving them more. Let them negotiate more. And so let's give them what, you know, like, I just thought about the tax reversion houses, you know. I just thought that was a good idea.
I'm
And
on
so-
board.
So what is the consensus then on this topic?
10.
10,000 to move to the city of Eastpointe?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there any provision in there that that amount would be reduced in some way if the city manager moved out of the city prior to the expiration of
I
the
think
contract?
I think we should just do it the 2 years for the contract, or the length of the contract.
So $10,000 to relocate, to move into the city of East Point.
And they're going to choose their own home, right? We're not going to force one of ours on it. All right.
I never said force, Mr. Curley. You have to be careful with your words.
Well,
And out of respect, you have to be careful with what your words.
okay, I'll change my word. We're not going to insist upon them using our house.
Absolutely. That's just a way of being smart, using city resources to provide something for someone who's going to work. People been doing that for years
We'll find somebody for the houses.
okay. Going forward, let's continue.
10 for okay.
When it comes to retirement, I mean, I'm fine with giving them the same retirement that the rest of our department heads receive. Isn't that what we've kind of normally done in the past?
Yeah, deferred compensation. I don't know the numbers. Brian, do you know the percentages?
So typically, the employer contribution is 10%, broken down in a 7 and 3 to a 401A plan. So I believe that if you look at Mr. Sabota's salary, which adds up to $117,500, that's what it would be. Yeah. Now, there's also an additional 5% towards health insurance. I believe they call it an HRA plan.
HSA.
No, the HSA is different. There's a retiree health plan, since this individual would not be receiving lifetime health insurance after retirement. So that's what every new employee with the city of Eastpointe gets, I believe.
Okay,
So the same
I think the same, yeah.
401A plan.
Yes.
Vacation, sick time, and other leave.
And of course, she does have the option to opt out just in case her husband has health insurance.
So with regard to retirement, what is going to be offered to Ms. Doom?
What Mr. Fairbrother mentioned. I think you can just get that from him, because I think keeping it the same as everybody else's.
Yeah. So it's a 7, 3, and 5, which adds up to be 15%.
Okay, thank you.
Membership dues, consulting and teaching. Notice.
Do we need days off? What do we do before 30 or something like that?
Yeah, I think we have 30 in here.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
I think for, that's fine, just keeping it that way. I think that's pretty much it. Unless there's anything else anyone wants to add.
Anything we're
It's
missing?
not in here.
No?
Did we mention weeks vacation?
30 days.
30 days? Okay.
No one likes to talk about this, but severance, is that in there?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, we tried to jump over that one.
yeah, we
Yeah.
do,
Have we got there yet?
three.
Joseph's one? Which one?
It's under paragraph
Wasn't that in
3.
Joseph's, contract?
Then we talked him down on that from 6 to 3, right? I think.
Yeah, I think the 3 months is good. I think what's in here is fine.
Yeah, I think he tried 6 and we agreed on 3.
So keep paragraph 3
Yeah,
on
the way
page
it
2, as is.
Page 2. Yeah, it's termination and severance pay. Yeah, he did try talking us up to 6 months, and we were like, no.
He's probably still paying right now, almost. It's just getting done.
Did we cover life insurance? I'm just throwing out different things. Typically, the supervisory or the department head life insurance policy would be $100,000 per year, or $100,000 per claim.
I think keeping that the same as the rest of our department heads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's included in paragraph- or, section 7, Brian.
Just inform me, I have a different copy than you guys do.
Oh, and we got 3 copies.
Here, let me get you the one that we're following.
Yeah, I would use one too, Rich, if you've got extras.
I sure do.
Does anybody have anything to add, starting with Mr. Curley?
No, we're doing great.
Yeah, I think we're doing really good. We're getting
I think,
we're getting through this contract fast.
I think that It's going to work out. It's going to be good for the city.
There's two different copies in there, Ryan, and the one he actually has the blanks that I've been filling in, and then the other one had some numbers that were actually included, so we're going off the one that is filled with all the blanks.
Well, I'm going to let them know, I'm just going to rattle off, the major things and then say that you'll be in touch with them to cover the details. I wanted to, I think someone mentioned goals. I think it was you. I wanted to really support that. There are communities that don't want to get to that level and want us kind of play it by ear. We'll like it. We'll know it. We'll like it when we see it. We'll maybe not tell them, and then we'll nail them. That's the feeling that comes across sometimes without goals. So I just wanted to applaud you getting 2 goals. You might want to give some thought as to how you want to do that. I think you mentioned the candidate is responsible for that. Sometimes the council does a facilitation, and the candidate can listen. But I don't know how you want to go about it, but I do think that without that, they're driving blind, and then you don't have anything to hold them responsible for, as much to hold them responsible for. Second, the last time around, kind of like this, where this was an innovation, I'm high green. I think there needs to be some thought about the first 6 months, the onboarding. How can this person be given cues if something isn't going right in a way that's constructive and early and helpful? So I have some ideas about that. There's a variety of folks that can help in that. And if you're interested, I'll put them on paper. Some would cost nothing, some would cost something. So I'm not making a sales pitch. I'm going to give you a range of options, but I think it's something to be thoughtful about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with our, the last time, we did really good because we were meeting every 3 months and discussing things with him as a group. So I think we were trying to definitely, make, work together the best that we possibly could with being very open and honest and.
You did everything right. The outcome, though, we want for
Right.
5 years, right? Yeah. So.
I mean, I'm open to other suggestions. I'm just saying that, we did try to.
Yeah, I think for sure, each of us will meet one-on-one with her probably first before we probably try to even get past that. And then I think, let's see, so it's November. I mean, so of course, budget will be a lot of talk of goals, and then we've done the capital improvement in January or February, so that might be like really good timing. Then it'd just be a couple months in. We can talk more about roads, Mr. Curley, and like we did yesterday. And I think that'd probably be good timing, because I think those, I mean, of course, you have to do the budget process, but the capital improvement thing was something I think we had just started doing a few years ago. And that seems to get then all the buildings and roads and water and sewer infrastructure plans down, which is a huge chunk of what we do, right? For sure, money-wise. But if there are any other ideas, but I guess the timing works out pretty well for that to be early in time.
Last thing is, this is actually, can you make this part of the motion if everyone agrees? It's a conditional offer subject to the customary background checks. Was that your intent?
What?
A conditional offer subject to criminal, motor vehicle, educational credentials, and other background
You
checks?
didn't hear that.
I
You didn't hear that part.
I was just double checking. So that's what GovHR would normally do at this point, so
I'm
hopefully.
not trying to get closer, I just can't hear you.
Yeah, so if everyone is agreeable to that, that's.
Are we not talking-
Mr. Cotton, I'll just make the motion that we will make a contingent offer with the things that we recommended here in the contract, in the, employment agreement, pending outcomes of background check and everything else Mr. Cotton just said, so.
Support.
Got a motion and support. Can you please call the roll?
Councilperson Lucido,
Yes.
Councilperson DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilperson Curley,
Yes.
Mayor Owens.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is mayor and council reports, starting with Councilman DeMonico.
I think I've said all I want to say tonight. Thank you, everybody, for getting together, and I'm glad that we were able to move forward so far tonight, and look forward to the next few days then.
Yeah, first, I just want to thank the 2 lone survivors out there that sat here all night with us. It's been a long meeting. And I hope everyone has a good night. I'm happy with our choice, and I'm excited to be moving forward with hiring a city manager.
I too, thank you, Harvey, thank you, Mary, for staying and speaking tonight. And I'm excited about what happened tonight. I really am. We all had our opinions, we all had our ideas, and through conversations and discussion, and we're going to keep doing that. And that's how this city is going to move forward, by listening to one another and being honest with one another and getting along. And I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go home and put my jammies on and have some hot chocolate and crackers.
Well, I want to, did you want to say anything, Mr. Cotton?
No, thank you.
I want to thank everybody, the 2 that's left, for coming up and, letting us know what your thoughts were, and also the staff, and also the person that wrote questions and helped us ask a good candidate questions, and the candidate, finding our next candidate for city manager. I think it's amazing how the residents come up and really help us and be a part of the community. It shows a lot about our community. And also thankful for the candidates who came out and toured our city. Whether they got it or not, I just, that was nice for them to show importance in working for the city of Eastpointe, and all the people that applied for the city of Eastpointe. It shows that we have a lot of potential, and a lot of people wouldn't mind living here and working for us. And also, going forward, I'm glad that we all came up with a decision, and we based that decision on our opinions. We based that decision on this newly scientific graph, references and things from the community, and also the staff. So all those lined up to help us better come up with a decision. And moving forward, we want to continuously listen to each other and respect each and everyone's opinion as elected officials, because as elected body, people are watching us. As residents, people are watching us, and we want to make sure we keep a level of respect and order in how people think and what people say, and think as individuals when we make decisions and moving forward. So can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Support.
I have motion and I have support. Call the roll.
Councilperson Curley,
Yes.
Councilperson Lucido,
Yes.
Mayor Owens,
Yes.
Councilperson DeMonico.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Guys, have a good night.
That's not